Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the what if. Pure disbelief was the unanimous emotion shared by the vast majority of high-ranking Shinigami present. Isshin's face was a mixture of terror and fury. The man balled his fists enraged. Damn it. Getsuga Tensho. Ripping his Zanpakuto out of its sheath, Isshin swung Engetsu with full force towards the closing Garganta. His attack proved to be ineffective and too late as the wave simply went flying into the air. Isshin gritted his teeth as he shook with anger. Stabbing his blade into the ground he howled, "Ichigo! Captain Shiba, control yourself, they're gone." Kyoraka was quick to intervene as he placed a hand on Isshin's shoulder. The dark-haired former captain looked over the reactions of his fellow Shinigami. They were all staring at him with wide eyes and distrustful glares. "Rukia, are you all right?" Yukatake ran over to check on the condition of his lieutenant. Thankfully, she appeared to be conscious still, but the raven-haired woman was not in good condition. Hana and Azane both ran to her sides as well and immediately began medical treatment. As this happened, Yamamoto retrieved his haori and approached Isshin with a stone-faced stare. "Captain Shiba, can you confirm that what White said is true? Is that creature truly your son?" Minus Azane and Hana, everyone else turned to eye Isshin suspiciously as if he was somehow at fault for what just happened. The former captain glanced over the crowd and sighed. He certainly looked like Ichigo, but with longer hair and those evil eyes. "It used your trademark ability, Getsuga Tensho, against me in battle." Yamamoto shook his head. "You should have told us this sooner. White is your son." "That's ridiculous," Soifun said condescendingly. Byakuya stood up from Rukia's side and gave Isshin a quizzical look. "You mentioned your children were humans, and that your son had died in a hollow attack. How could this have come to pass?" "I don't know. The night Ichigo died, he was attacked by a hollow. The only person who saw what happened was Karen." The man trailed off. Yamamoto raised a brow. "How long ago was his death?" "Around 2.5 years ago. Karen told me a hollow attacked Ichigo and killed him. I don't see how it's possible for him to have become the same hollow that attacked Masaki decades ago. Unless..." Isshin shook his head. "Unless what?" Soifun demanded. "You remember me mentioning that White did not die in a traditional way the first time I faced it, correct? It tried to infect my wife through some strange type of hollowification, but we managed to cure it at great expense. Masaki and I both lost our powers after that day," the former captain elaborated. "What does that mean though?" Byakuya questioned doubtfully. "I am curious as to what your definition of cure was." "When Masaki and I lost our powers, it was to suppress and eradicate the hollow. We had no reason to believe it unsuccessful after our powers went away. The only possibility that can explain this is perhaps White latched onto our son's soul somehow, before he was born." Isshin pieced together. Byakuya looked a bit spooked by the man's revelation and held his head down. Such a thing would be disturbing indeed, though it does explain how this could have happened. Yukatake walked over and gawked at Isshin. "Are you saying that this hollow fused with your son's soul? How is that possible? What was he like before he died? Did you ever sense any malicious instincts in him?" The white-haired captain's hesitation in speech was a clear sign that he was just as disturbed by the news as everyone else. "Ichigo was spiritually adept from birth. I knew he would be since his mother and I both were as well. He had a mostly normal life, and was a good person. He might have been a bit of a hothead, but I always thought he'd make a good Shinigami since he usually helped pluses. I just don't understand how he could have warped into that abomination." Isshin sighed. "What else can you tell us about the original White, Captain Shiba?" Toshiro joined in inquisitively. The man shrugged. "Not much. It fought like a Shinigami and was completely black. I don't know where the name White even came from. I don't know much about the nature of hollowification, but I refuse to believe my son would willingly inflict this much damage. When he died, that darker part of his soul must have manifested. There's no way of knowing if that is in fact the same Ichigo as my son. Hollows are driven almost purely by instinct. The original White's personality may have twisted your son's into a completely new one. Not to mention, most are willing to do anything to survive," Hana agreed. "Don't even tell me you're trying to justify what just happened here. That hollow is serious threat to the Soul Society, no to the balance of everything. Whether he's your son or not, he needs to be brought down. Komamura cut in. The massive wolf man was clutching his wounded side as he limped over towards the group. Many of the others were surprised by his wolf-like appearance, but nobody said anything about it. Isshin looked down shamefully. I agree, Captain Komamura, I cannot overlook Ichigo's actions. I don't know what he has become, but I know that he must be stopped. I will not hesitate to do what must be done. Everyone watched Isshin intently, taking in his emotional, but serious remark as genuine. After a brief silence, Yamamoto spoke up. He referred to himself as the King of Hollows, a title I find preposterous. What? Hitsugaya gasped. Can such a thing even exist? Hollows are always killing each other, how could they possibly have a king? White has a way of influencing other hollows, we've seen it before. If he manages to unite multiple Vasto Lords against us, then we may very well be in serious trouble. Not to mention, with 3 rogue captains at his side, we will face a crippling disadvantage. Aizen's likely going to tell them all about our powers and defenses, Kyoraka sighed. We need to catch that monster and lock him away in Muken, if you ask me, Soifun interjected seriously. Kyoraka gave her a doubtful look. I doubt that is the kind of hollow we could capture. But it may very well come to that, depending on how powerful he becomes. We need to act fast. The longer we leave that thing free to gather allies, the worse off we'll be, Komamura stated. Calm yourselves, he may be powerful, but we are not outnumbered. There has never been any proof to suggest that there's even a handful of Vasto Lords in Hueco Mundo. What are the chances White could unite them all? Yukatake questioned. His remark was met with a few doubtful faces, but was soon overlooked as Yamamoto turned towards Rukia. What was it that Sosuke Aizen took from Rukia Kuchiki? Answering his question, a painted-faced captain with a strange headpiece landed nearby. That would be the Hogyoku, Captain Commander. Isshin's eyes widened. We should probably bring Kazuki here to explain why Aizen would be after something like that. Send word for him immediately. Tell former Captain Urahara that I will forgive his transgressions if he agrees to come out of hiding. It would appear his accusations against Captain Aizen weren't unfounded after all, Yamamoto gestured. Kuretsuchi immediately left upon hearing the command. His lack of questioning clearly indicated that he had been watching their conversation from afar or likely on video. His awareness to the situation appeared no different than the others. Rukia was somewhat more stable now and gave Isshin a weak look. What did Ichigo want from me? Don't call him that, I will not disgrace my own son's name any longer. That hollow's name is White, and he wanted the Hogyoku no doubt. If he was in league with Aizen, then he likely seeks to use it to empower himself, or others, Isshin sighed. Kenpachi placed his sword over his shoulder and grunted in approval. Well, now I have even more of a reason to kill that hollow. Don't be ridiculous, White would annihilate Uzuraki. Hell, he could probably devastate any of us one-on-one. Minus the Captain Commander of course, Soifun pointed out, we're going to have to work together to bring him down. The way that other hollow helped White against Captain Yamamoto is proof enough that he's not going to fight fair. Hollows don't have honor, Zaraki. Bah, who needs honor? I just want to fight something that isn't pathetic. I could take him at full strength, Kenpachi boasted eagerly. Kyoraka shrugged. Suit yourself, he wasn't even trying and he nearly killed Jashiro and myself. That's what I'm talking about, finally an enemy that I can go full power against. The spiky-haired warrior grinned with bloodlust. We don't know the limit to his power yet, even without that Vasto Lord's interference, he was going toe-to-toe with the Captain Commander. That is nothing to overlook here, Byakuya cut in somewhat morbidly. Yukatake glanced over at the head captain curiously. How would you gauge his power now that you've faced him for yourself, head captain? Yamamoto grunted in response. It is difficult to say. His mission here was for the Hogyoku. Had he come with the intent to conquer us, I might have had to use my Bankai. I have not faced a hollow that powerful in many centuries. Everyone jaw dropped at his response. Why your Bankai? Toshiro gawked. Isn't that a bit overkill? Perhaps not, Kyoraka interrupted. You saw what he did earlier, just look out there. His attack actually went through Sekiseki Stone and blew up half a district. Not to mention, that Sero would probably incinerate anybody below captain level in mere seconds. How could his attack go through the barrier though? That's impossible, Soifun said morbidly. He's definitely more dangerous than any of us gave him credit for. We need to repair the barrier before the royal guards start to intervene. Kyoraka nodded. Shunsui is right, Yukitake agreed. So what now then? Soifun asked, glancing over at Yamamoto as if expecting him to already have a solution. The old man sighed heavily. With the loss of 3 captains, and the damage sustained here, I believe it necessary that we withdraw our forces for now. Captain Kuretsuchi will work on the repairs, while Captain Shiba retrieves former Captain Urahara. We may in fact need his aid if White chooses to bring his entire army next time. All available forces will oversee the repair of the barrier in the meantime, but first we must address the squads. Kazuki will know what to do. He might even have a better idea of what White's power is, Isshin nodded. Several hours passed in the aftermath of Aizen's betrayal and Ichigo's infiltration. The entire Soul Society was on high alert and was now gathered in a large plaza. Standing on some sort of stage overlooking the massive crowd of Shinigami stood the majority of the captains. At the front of the group was Yamamoto. He explained the attack to the rank-and-file troops to calm the chaos. Rukia was quick to notice the lack of several key details, namely Ichigo being Isshin's son. She couldn't help but think it was for the best. The last thing they needed was to alienate a captain as powerful as Isshin. The raven-haired woman herself was still gravely injured, but thankfully due to Azane and Unohana's quick response, she was recovering remarkably well. Nevertheless, the area where Aizen had ripped the Hogyoku from her body still hurt like hell. Rukia turned away from the crowd as she noticed Isshin making his way for a Senkaimon to the world of the living. She quickly pursued him, despite the movement limitations of her injury, and managed to catch him before he stepped inside. Isshin eyed her surprised as she stepped in front of him. "Excuse me, Captain Shiba, can I talk to you please?" The man looked away with an uninterested expression. "Now's not really a good time, Lieutenant Kuchiki. Please, well, it's about that hollow. I promise this is important," Rukia persisted. Sighing in defeat, Isshin motioned for Rukia to follow him through the spiritual doorway. As they entered, the two walked in calm silence for a few minutes. Thankfully the awkward silence didn't last long as Rukia took her cue to begin. "I don't know if you've heard about how White took me hostage a while back. That night he fought Captains Zaraki, Hitsugaya, Aizen, and my brother." "I heard about that," Isshin replied bluntly. He didn't follow up with any other comment, leaving Rukia to cautiously rethink her next remark. She glanced over seriously. "Well, the part one didn't tell everyone is that when he took me hostage, he went to this graveyard. I can't remember the faces very well, but I could have sworn I saw your daughter Karen there." Isshin's eyes widened as he looked over at her. "We were all there. It was the anniversary of Ichigo's death. Karen, Yuzu, and myself, you saw us." "Yes, I feel terrible for not saying anything, but I saw him go after Karen that night. Which is one of the reasons why I was shocked to see her in the Soul Society," Rukia explained slowly. The former captain stared ahead blankly. "That's the night my powers came back. I thought I caught a fleeting glance of him, but until now I just assumed I was seeing things. If you don't mind me asking, why do you think White is so powerful anyway?" Rukia wondered. "Well, considering his heritage, it makes more sense. As his father I am a captain-level Shinigami. His mother was a Quincy, and with White's soul combined with his own, it's likely he possesses the power of Quincy, Shinigami, and Hollow. Individually they're all powerful, but together I can't even imagine." Isshin replied seriously. "Your wife was a Quincy?" Rukia stuttered in disbelief. Isshin didn't even bother to acknowledge her question as he looked away. Knowing it would be unwise to press the issue, Rukia changed the subject. "When he attacked the academy, your daughter tried to confront him. He wouldn't kill her for some reason." "It makes sense now. She's his sister," Rukia concluded. Isshin seemed confused by her statement. Ichigo always did care about his sisters. If there's even a shred of humanity left in him, then it would be for spared on those two. "I need to speak with Karen, and figure out the whole story. Is your other daughter safe? Rukia questioned. The man nodded. I left her with Kazuki, she should be alright. If nothing else, I'll ask Rukin to watch her until Kazuki gets back. Why do you think Aizen betrayed us? Rukia asked. Ishin glared. I couldn't say, I barely know him, but the guy did seem to have a fascination with hollows. Sorry to pester you with all these questions, Rukia apologized as she clearly took the hint that he was annoyed. The rest of their walk was spent in silence. Hawako Mundo, Manos Forest As Ichigo and company passed through the closing Ganganta, he let out a heavy sigh of relief. Finally out of there, it's good we left when we did. Aizen was quick to notice his expression. He must still be surprised by the news of his family being Shinigami. Well, that was quite the exit, Captain Aizen. I had no idea you intended to leave in such style, Jin chuckled. Konami remained passive, but nodded in agreement. It will definitely send them a message. Ichigo, I must say, I rather liked the way you revealed yourself to them. Aizen grinned as he placed a hand on the hollow's shoulder. Before he could even react in time, Ichigo had spun around and grabbed his wrist. The orange-haired hollow squeezed it with incredible force, causing Aizen to grimace in pain. The Hollow King glared at him. Don't touch me, Shinigami, you knew about this, didn't you? You knew my father and sister were Shinigami. Konami and Jin both reached for their blades, but hesitated, as Ichigo formed a sero in his hand. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Now then, Sosuke, why don't you explain this to me? Releasing Aizen's wrist, Ichigo chucked the captain back. He reached down and left his hand on the hilt of Zangetsu as he stared fearsomely. Ulquiorra did the same, whilst Wunderweiss remained still. After a very uncomfortable silence, Aizen nodded. Very well, I will explain what I know. Your father, Isshin Shiba, is the former captain of Squad 10. He lost his powers several decades ago, only recently did they return. As for your sister, I believe he came to enroll her in the Shinigami Academy a week or two ago. Let's make this perfectly clear before going back to Las Noches. You three answer to me. Not the other way around. If I ask you a question, or order you to do something, then you better do it. There are many hollows that would hate to see your kind wandering about like you own the place. You're all going to have to prove yourselves if you want any kind of authority here. Also, give me the Hogyoku, Ichigo said darkly. Jin and Tusen both glanced over at Aizen, wondering how he was going to react. The captain eyed Ichigo uncertainly. Why exactly? Do you not trust me to carry it? I don't believe you are aware of how to use it, so would that really be appropriate? Don't make me repeat myself, Ichigo said threateningly as he drew his blade halfway. As it lifted out of the sheath, black spiritual energy poured forth. Before he could fully draw it, Aizen pulled out the orb and walked over to him. There's no need for that, Ichigo. Here, you can carry it. Upon grabbing the orb from Aizen, Ichigo sheathed his blade and shook his head. Don't make this any more difficult than it needs to be. Of course, Sosuke nodded respectfully. I'm just used to running things, so forgive my standoff behavior. You made it perfectly clear that you are in command. We will respect that. Thank you for allowing us a place in your army. Ulquiorra watched Aizen curiously. He seems too agreeable. Why does that bother me? I better watch him from here on out. Jin shook his head and chuckled. I don't believe we were properly introduced. My name is Jin Ichimaru. It's quite the honor to meet you in person. You should have heard the tall tales about you in the Soul Society. Your infiltration will likely demoralize them greatly. I don't know which one of these Shinigami seems more suspicious, Aizen or Ichimaru. Ichigo wondered as he bluntly nodded at the foxy man. Konami bowed his head respectfully. I respect what you stand for, White. You have a strong sense of duty and honor from I've seen. Your justice also aligns with my own ideals. I have faith that you will make a good leader. Well, we should go break the news about you three to the rest of Hawako Mundo. Wunderweiss, Huller, you two are coming as well. Las Noches has more than enough room. Ichigo turned to leave the colossal cave. Everyone slowly followed him as he made his way back to Las Noches. Karakura Town Graveyard. Yuzu Oni-chan. Yuzu sighed sadly as she stared down at her brother's grave. The past few weeks under the tutelage of Ryu had proven rather interesting for her. The training was unlike anything she could describe, but thanks to her natural skills, as Rukin had come to call them, she progressed remarkably well. She chose to visit Ichigo's grave today to clear her head. Ryu believed that she needed some kind of motivation or closure, so here they were. Staring down at the tombstone, she couldn't help but wonder where her brother's soul even went. Ryu had explained in vague detail that hollows dwell in a strange world called Hueco Mundo. Part of her wondered if it was possible that Ichigo was there. To her side stood Ryu himself. This was his first time visiting Ichigo's grave, and he seemed deep in thought as he stared down at it alongside Yuzu. The raven-haired teenager broke the silence finally. It's a shame he died, the world could definitely have used another Quincy. Ichigo was a caring person, he didn't deserve to die to a hollow. His death was so unfair, why'd it have to be him? What did that hollow want from him? She shook her head sadly. You really loved your brother, I take it. You never stopped talking about him. Ryu shook his head somewhat annoyed as met Yuzu's saddened gaze. The young teen stared up at him somewhat unhappy. Everyone kept telling me that these things happen for a reason, and that he's in a better place. Where is he now? Well, my father theorized that the hollow sensed his emerging spiritual powers. Hollows consume the souls of their victims. If that's the case, then your brother's soul is likely buried somewhere within Hueco Mundo, Ryu speculated. Yuzu looked down again. He's in Hueco Mundo after all. If you don't mind me asking, what exactly did the hollow look like? The one that attacked your brother, I mean. Ryu asked curiously. The girl shrugged. I overheard Papa and Karen-chan describe it somewhat. I believe they mentioned it had forward-facing horns and long hair. It also had markings over its black and white body. Papa called it white, I think. The older Quincy's eyes widened horrified. What? Wait a minute, I've seen a hollow by that description before. It was chasing some girl at a park. I tried to stop it, but it easily overpowered me. It had long orange hair. It must have been the same one. What? Yuzu gasped. You've seen that hollow before. If your family's description is accurate, then it would have to be the same hollow. At the time I had no idea what it even was. After some digging, and Shinigami espionage, I discovered that the hollow I encountered is actually quite infamous. The Shinigami have a name for it, they call him White. It is probably the same hollow, Ryu explained whilst simultaneously piecing things together. The girl seemed frightened by the name, but nodded. Then that's the hollow that killed Ichigo. Ryu nodded slowly. If that's the case, then avenging your brother will prove quite difficult. The Shinigami I overheard talking about it described White as the most powerful hollow the Soul Society had ever encountered. Allegedly it took on multiple captains in battle, which would explain the vast spiritual signatures I sensed the night I encountered it. Why didn't that hollow kill you though? Yuzu wondered. Ryu shook his head. I couldn't say. My father found me the next day. From what I can remember, the hollow seemed very interested in the girl it was pursuing. What did this girl look like? Yuzu asked. Ryu thought for a moment. I believe she was around your age and had black hair. She wore it in a ponytail if I remember correctly. Yuzu's eyes widened. Do you remember what she was wearing that day? The Quincy shook his head. Barely, she was dressed casually as far as I can remember. Though her shirt was black. I remember that much. That sounds like Karen. Could White have been after her? Yuzu gasped at the thought of it. Ryu seemed distraught. Wait, so that girl was your sister? She's alive, right? Yuzu nodded. Yeah, Karen-chan's gone off to the Shinigami Academy, remember? The older teenager frowned. That's unusual. If that's the same hollow that killed your brother, why would it spare your sister? How powerful is that hollow anyways? It took on captains. Yuzu questioned surprised. Her recent exposure to the topic had been flooded with a wide range of random facts. The girl didn't know much about the Soul Society, but she knew that Shinigami captains were very powerful. Ryu shrugged. I couldn't say. That hollow was a Vasto Lord, the most elite evolution a hollow can achieve. I should have realized that before I recklessly attacked it. How much do you know about hollows? Yuzu asked. Though Ryu had taught her much of the basics in the Quincy craft, she was still ignorant to the nature of their enemy. He glanced down at the ground. I know fair amount, but if it's about your brother you're asking, then I am afraid I can't help you. No soul that is consumed by a hollow ever emerges from Hueco Mundo, at least not the same. So what happens after a hollow eats a person's soul? She wondered. Ryu glared into the distance. Nobody knows that for sure, but if somebody is consumed by a hollow, they're pretty much lost to the pits of Hueco Mundo forever. I've never been there, but from what I've heard, it is a desolate, dark realm where only the strong survive. I'm afraid there's nothing we can really do for your brother if that's what you're wondering. I see, Yuzu said sadly as she stared at Ichigo's grave. A brief image of his face flashed through her mind, as she remembered the last time she saw him. Ichigo, I promise one day that'll all find you. We'll be together again, and I'll never leave your side. You've always been strong for me, this time, I want to be strong for you. The light-haired girl was so distracted in her thoughts, that she barely noticed the footsteps of somebody behind her. Yuzu could feel a certain uneasiness in the air, which immediately led her to suspect the arrival was someone with spiritual power. Turning around slowly, her eyes met the gazes of two individuals. One was a tall blonde-haired man with a white uniform. To his side was a woman she recognized as the Sternritter she met previously. Yuzu eyed them both suspiciously. Can I help you? Ryu immediately spun around in a graceful tension as he eyed the newcomers surprised. His jaw dropped. Sternritters. What are you doing here? Oi, it's Ishida. Well, isn't this nice? For someone not interested in his people's cause, you're awfully quick to take this rookie girl under your wing, Candace noted. You're the one that told me to find the Ishidas, Yuzu clarified. This better not be a waste of my time. Candace, I assume this is the girl you spoke of. The blonde-haired man asked. Candace nodded. Yeah, that's her. Jugram, she's Yuzu Kurosaki, and that guy is Rukin Ishida's son. So this is the one the master was interested in. And this girl is under his tutelage. The man figured as he examined the two teenage Quincy's. What are you doing here? Shinigami are crawling all over this city in case you haven't noticed, Ryu noted. Candace placed her hands on her hip and laughed. Not anymore, I just saw a bunch of them retreat. Thought it'd be the perfect time for Hashwolf and I to pay you guys a visit. I believe my father already turned you down, he said dryly as he pushed up his glasses. Maybe, but you never did give us your answer, Ryu. To be honest, it's kind of insulting seeing rogue Quincy's rejecting the authority of their betters. With the master returning, you had better know your place pretty soon, Candace said in a matter-of-fact way. The blonde-haired man held his hand up to silence Candace, giving her a stone-faced glare while doing so. Enough, Candace, let me handle this. She crossed her arms as the tall blonde man eyed Ryu and Yuzu curiously. After a brief silence he focused his gaze on Ryu intently. The Quincy's are a force to be reckoned with. I am Jugram Hashwolf, leader of the Sternritters. I represent the interests for our kind, and enforce the will of our Grand Monarch Yawach. He has awakened and grows stronger by the day. So long as Quincy blood flowers through your veins, you owe him your allegiance. Yawach, father of the Quincy's. But that's just a legend, Ryu trailed off in disbelief. It is no legend, boy, His Majesty and His mighty Wandenreich is absolute in its power. I will give you an ultimatum, serve His Majesty or die. If you are not with us, then you are no different than Shinigami in our eyes, Jugram said calmly. A heavy chill ran up Yuzu's spine as she reflexively reached for her cross. The blonde woman looked amused by the gesture, but the man appeared far more serious as he examined Yuzu closely. You told my father that our presence would not affect your plans, why threaten us now? Ryu half demanded. The blonde man stared seriously. Emperor Yawach has no interest in your father, he wants me to recruit you. And if I refuse, you'll kill me, Ryu said, narrowing his gaze. You won't refuse, because unlike your father, you can see the justice of our cause. The Shinigami must be purged, he explained. Uryu stared momentarily. I'll talk to you, watch, but if you don't mind my asking, why is he interested in me? You can ask him yourself when we arrive, Jugram explained, before shifting his gaze to Yuzu. As for the girl, Yuzu Kurosaki was your name, correct? Why yes, Yuzu nodded, somewhat frightened. He turned towards Candace curiously. You say her powers recently manifested. How peculiar. Did you know there were other Quincy's here, Uryu? No, I had no idea until she showed up recently. Though she seems to know Ms. Catnip. I wouldn't doubt her knowing Yuzu is probably related to the girl showing up and looking for my father, Uryu noted as he adjusted his spectacles. Jugram glanced at Candace understandingly, before he looked back towards Yuzu. I see, and you did not know her. I've never heard of anyone by the name of Kurosaki. You're clearly not a pureblood. No, Yuzu was about to explain her half-breed heritage before Uryu interrupted. She's not a pureblood, but her powers are quite strong. My father has taken a liking to her, and allowed me to train her, he explained. Yuzu was quick to catch on to Uryu's diverting comment and nodded. Yes sir, Uryu-kun and his father have been very helpful. I want to understand my powers so that I can better use them. Then you should come with us. I will let you watch decide your fate, girl, Hashwolf stated. Wait, but I can't just leave, Yuzu hesitated. Secure them, Candace. We're going back to the palace, Hashwolf ordered as he turned to leave. Yuzu seemed afraid, but Uryu placed a hand on her shoulder to comfort her. Don't worry, you won't be alone. Let's see what they have to say. Your father said to stay away from these people though, she whispered near inaudibly. The raven-haired Quincy gave her a serious look. Come on, it's not like we have much of a choice anyways. Without another word, the two followed the powerful Sternritters. Hueco Mundo. Ichigo After a short trip along the Manos forest, Ichigo stopped in his tracks and turned around. Just a precaution, but I barely know anything about you, other than the fact that you three are Shinigami captains. So you'll forgive me if I don't wholly trust you. Before we continue, I'd like to know more about who you three are and why you want my help in destroying the Soul Society, Ichigo explained. Konami was the first to respond. My name is Konami Tusen, former captain of Squad 9. I believe that the Soul Society is corrupted and I seek to show them justice. Jin grinned as he spoke up next. Well, as I've said, I'm Jin Ichimaru. I commanded Squad 3. I have been following Aizen-sama for years, and still do. That is my reason. Somehow that seems a bit vague. I'll have to watch him just as much as Aizen, Ichigo thought before turning towards Aizen himself. The man sighed. Well, you know my name. I was the Squad 5 captain. I wish to overthrow the Seraiti and kill the Soul King. The Soul King. Ichigo cocked his head confused. Who is that? I don't recall seeing a Shinigami that powerful, unless you're talking about Yamamoto. No, Yamamoto is merely the commander of the Gote 13. That thing is the ruler of the Shinigami. It resides in the Soul Palace, in a realm separate from the Soul Society itself. It is normally impossible to reach unless you have an Okayan, Aizen went into detail. So this Soul King is in a realm by himself. How does he rule your kind then? Ulquiorra cut in confused. Sosuke shook his head. It doesn't, it sits atop the Ryokyu Palace protected by Zero Squad. My goal is its death. I trust that is sufficient enough of an answer. Not exactly. Why would you want to kill him? Ichigo shook his head. How could you have ever even seen him if he doesn't leave his palace? He's awfully curious, though I've wondered that myself. Aizen-sama, Jin cut in as he opened his eyes fully. The brown-haired captain shook his head. That is something I would prefer to tell you in private, Ichigo. Very well. One more thing, before we depart though. What are you Zanpakutos capable of? Ichigo asked. All three captains slightly tensed upon hearing the question. Jin's widened eyes stared at Ichigo. Not only is he powerful, but he's smart enough to not let Aizen get one up on him. This Ichigo is definitely not a fool. You're quite demanding of us, Konami noted somewhat disapprovingly, but he immediately shut up when Ichigo's spiritual pressure rose. Aizen immediately calmed the situation. Of course we would be happy to tell you about our Zanpakutos. We could all demonstrate them if you'd like. I would in fact. Jillian's move, Ichigo commanded the massive herd of Manos Grande to clear a path so that the three captains had room to show their Zanpakutos. Konami, go first, Ichigo instructed. The dark-skinned man nodded as he took a step forward and released his Shikai. It appeared to have the ability to produce sound as well as multiple rings that fired off like a barrage of blades. Ichigo found the display interesting, but quickly brushed it off. Show me your Bankai now. This must have been Aizen's plan. He's going to use Kyoka Suigetsu against Ichigo. Clever, Jin thought as Konami released his Bankai and explained its abilities. Afterward, Ichigo nodded and glanced at Jin. You're next, Jin. Oh, we're on a first-name basis already. Jin chuckled lightheartedly as he took a step forward. Ichigo nodded his head. We can be so long as you don't do anything stupid. Of course, allow me to show you my Zanpakuto, Jin grinned. After his release command his Zanpakuto appeared to grow in length. Following a brief explanation of its powers, Jin immediately followed up by releasing his Bankai. Ichigo watched somewhat impressed as the blade grew to a ridiculous length and cut every tree in the open direction down. He retracted the blade in what appeared to be a second before sheathing his Zanpakuto and walking back towards the group. Aizen immediately passed him grinning with excitement. Well, since you're so eager to see my Zanpakuto, I will show you. We should really be heading back to Las Noches. I don't trust those fools you left in charge will operate well in your absence, Ulquiorra dissuaded. The Hollow King nodded. I suppose so. Go ahead without me, Ulquiorra. Take Wunderweiss, Huller, and these other two Shinigami with you. I would like to talk with Aizen in private anyway. Very well. Hurry back soon though, Ulquiorra nodded before motioning the others to follow him. The massive herd of Jillians left with Huller as well. Aizen nodded at Jin and Konami. Go with them, Ichigo and I will catch up shortly. Aizen-sama seems far too agreeable about all of this. I wonder what he has planned, Konami thought as he followed Ulquiorra, Jin, and the other hollows. After everyone was gone, Ichigo stared at Aizen intently. Show me your Shikai, Sosuke. I assume it's pretty powerful if you didn't take me seriously in the first place. You're very perceptive, Ichigo, I respect that. Allow me to show you, Kyoka Suigetsu. Drawing his blade, Aizen pointed it downward. Ichigo stared at it for a moment uncertainly. Aizen smiled. It has the ability to manipulate water. Quite a useful ability in opposition to the Captain Commander's fire. Observe. Aizen swung the blade and Ichigo watched as a torrential tsunami-like wave fired from it and went crashing through the Manos forest. He cocked his head. And that's just your Shikai. You're like the opposite of the Captain Commander then. I'm surprised you haven't tried fighting him yourself with something like that. All in due time. As for my Bankai, it can. Ichigo's mind completely blacked out as he lost all touch with reality. He looked around in pitch blackness, completely overwhelmed by its sudden arrival. What the hell is this? Aizen, where are you? Ichigo called out in the darkness. Then, much to his shock, he appeared in the middle of some type of sideways city. He landed atop a skyscraper of some sort, greatly resembling those in the world of the living. His eyes followed it both directions. On one side below he saw a vast ocean of water. Beneath, the sideways buildings, and the sky, above, appeared black as night with a red outline over what appeared to be a crescent moon. He looked around confused. What is this place? Where am I? Your inner world, a voice sounded out of nowhere. Ichigo's eyes widened as he looked around frantically for the voice's owner. It was unfamiliar, which greatly alarmed him. After a moment of searching, his eyes finally rested upon an unusual sight. In front of him was somebody he had never seen before. He had dark hair, blue eyes, and a black flowing outfit. His appearance was that of a young man, likely not much older than a teenager. He had a passive look on his face as he examined Ichigo's confusion. How did I get here? Ichigo asked the stranger uncertainly. Suddenly, the stranger's body began to change. An entire half of his body changed from black to white, as half a black hollow horn formed over it as well. One eye appeared hollow-feed, while the other remained blue. The duality of his changed appearance greatly alarmed Ichigo as he reached for his Zanpakuto. "Who are you?" he asked again. "You know who I am. You've known my name ever since you became an Arrancar," the stranger replied. Ichigo glanced down at his sword, which quickly disappeared. He looked up shocked as it was now in the unusual person's hand. He quickly figured out what that meant. "You're Zangetsu." The half-hollow-feed stranger nodded as he approached Ichigo. The sword in his hand disappeared as he did so. "You're quick to realize this. You have a strong bond with your own soul. That is good. It makes us both stronger. Why did you bring me here?" "Last thing I remember was Aizen showing me his Shikai," Ichigo stated. "I brought you in here because you're in danger. Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu is not what it seems," Zangetsu explained. Ichigo cocked his head. "What are you saying? There is only one way to know for sure what you see is real. You must absorb the reishi around you. You must use your Quincy powers," Zangetsu said seriously. "Quincy powers? How the hell am I supposed to know use those? I'm not a Quincy," he said the last part hesitantly as he remembered what Karen said about their mother. "Am I?" Ichigo finished his statement uncertainly. Zangetsu nodded. "I am the combined manifestation of your power. I am everything that makes you Shinigami, Quincy, and Hollow. You have the powers of all three, and you will need them if you intend to remain king." "So then Aizen's Zanpakuto is some kind of trick?" Ichigo questioned urgently. "Like an illusion. You said I was in danger. Let me out of here, I'll kill him." "Calm yourself. You need to be smart about this. If he realizes that you caught on to the illusion, you will lose your one and only chance to break free of it. A preemptive strike is the best thing you can do, is break his illusion over you," the two-sided being explained. "How can I use my Quincy powers then? I don't know anything about them, and how is that supposed to help me? I can just sense his powers anyways, can't I?" Ichigo said distantly as he looked at his hands. "You cannot always trust your five senses. Sometimes you must use your inner eye to see through false realities. Aizen understands the nature of your Hollow and Shinigami powers, but he does not know what your added Quincy blood can do. You have a transcendent sixth sense, and it takes the combined powers of all three for you to use it," Zangetsu elaborated. No sooner had the words left his mouth, did Ichigo see two distinct auras coming from either half of his body. The dark half of Zangetsu glowed blue and white, whilst his other white half glowed red and black. Ichigo watched with confusion as the two halves of his inner world suddenly began to clash. The entire inner world dissipated right before Ichigo's eyes as he quickly found himself back in the Manos forest. Aizen continued on in his demonstration, "And this is my Bankai. It can absorb the moisture from within the bodies of others and..." Ichigo tuned out Aizen's explanation as he blankly stared into the distance. The sight of the crashing waves seemed completely real, it even felt real, but something about what Zangetsu said led him to sense that it was not. Another strange feeling overcame his senses as everything began to fade. His sight faded, his hearing lessened, and soon he could sense nothing. After a momentary absence of perception, he tried to instinctively do what Zangetsu said and absorbed nearby reishi. As he did so, a faint glow appeared in his mind, and almost like a sixth sense, he could detect the reishi in a way he could not previously. Then suddenly, he felt an alien sensation within his mind. Nothing could wholly describe this mysterious new sixth sense, but for some reason, he could see the spiritual composition of everything else around him. Sort of like how Neo could see coding in the Matrix. He focused on Aizen's Raryoku and charged without hesitation. Grabbing Aizen's Zanpakuto by the blade, he drew his sword and plunged it forth, straight into the Shinigami's shoulder. A split second later, reality returned to normal as he now stood behind and impaled Aizen with a bloodthirsty growl. Confirming the truth behind the illusion, Ichigo noticed a lack of water in the distance and twisted his blade. "You must think you're a genius, don't you, Sosuke?" Aizen was petrified in disbelief as he looked down at the white blade sticking through him. Ichigo ripped Kyoka Suigetsu out of Aizen's hand and threw the blade against the ground. Moments later he pulled his sword back and sheathed it, causing Aizen to fall to his knees. The captain grimaced painfully as Ichigo walked around in front of him. Aizen looked up with disbelief. "You broke through Kyoka Suigetsu. How? I should cut you down right now, Aizen, you're already plotting against me." Ichigo growled as he grabbed the man's throat and held him at eye level. The captain appeared both amazed and horrified by Ichigo's astounding immunity to his Zanpakuto. He stared into Ichigo's eyes for a brief moment and sighed, "Truly, you are beyond my expectations. Nobody has ever broken the perfect hypnosis, it affects all senses. I could see your composition in its rawest form. You shine like a torch compared to everything around here," Ichigo answered. Aizen tilted his head confused. "Kyoka Suigetsu even affects one's ability to detect spiritual power. That would be impossible, unless you've gained transcendence." "What?" Ichigo demanded. "Of course, I should have considered that. You're part Quincy, part Shinigami, and part Hollow, and as an Arrancar, you embody the perfect conditions to be a transcendent being. You have a sixth sense, you can physically see spiritual power in its true form, can't you? Remarkable, you're truly fit to be king of the Hollows," Aizen noted calmly. Ichigo released his grip on Aizen and stared at him confused. "For someone who just got caught in the act of deceiving me, you seem awfully casual about all of this. I'm done playing games with you. Tell me why you wanted this Hogyoku. Do you intend to use it against this Soul King somehow?" "Yes, I do in fact, but first and foremost, we must create your Arrancar army," Aizen replied with a grin as he clutched his wound. It didn't appear fatal, but Aizen was still bleeding a decent amount from it. "You need our help to kill the Soul King, but you never really explained why you wanted to," Ichigo stated. Aizen looked serious now as he stared Ichigo down. After giving him a strange look, the former captain spoke distantly, "You're not ready to hear it, and I am not ready to tell you. I will not cloud your mind with such distractions." "Why do you think I'm not ready?" he growled. "Because you are impatient. If I tell you everything, you'll simply go on a rampage and get yourself captured. I recognize your power, but even you at your current level are not strong enough to face the dangers you would recklessly confront. Consider this for your own good, I'm protecting you against your own hot-headedness, Ichigo. If you were to do anything stupid, the Soul Society could capture you and lock you away in Muken," Aizen calmed him. Ichigo raised a brow. "What the hell is Muken?" "It is the lowest level of the Soul Society's prison. Their one is sealed deep beneath the Squad 1 barracks. Originally it was created for traitors that could not be slain. I imagine it would be your fate should the Soul Society ever catch you. It restricts all spiritual power and renders one petrified deep underground in darkness, indefinitely," the man sighed. "Is this your game, Aizen? If you think withholding information from me is enough to spare your life, then you're sadly mistaken. Then go ahead and kill me, Ichigo," Aizen smiled. "I will then," Ichigo growled as he drew his sword and brought it across Aizen's throat. Much to his astonishment, the Hogyoku flew in front of his blade and blocked Ichigo's strike. He stared in disbelief. "What the?" Ichigo looked down at his own free hand and noticed the Hogyoku was absent from his possession. "When did I drop it? Maybe he took it from me when I was under his Kyoka Suigetsu's illusion." Aizen retrieved the orb before giving Ichigo a heavy sigh. "You need my help, and I need yours. Let's call a truce. Neither one of us gains anything by betraying the other. You know this, and I know this. I am no good to you dead, and you're no good to me unless you're willing to cooperate." The captain extended his hand out with a serious look. "Deal." The Arrancar glared at Aizen's extended hand with extreme hostility, but finally nodded in acceptance. "Fine, but this conversation will be continued." "Got that?" "Of course," Aizen nodded. "Let's get out of here," Ichigo sighed. In truth, he was partially glad the Hogyoku stopped his attack. Killing Aizen might have been for the best in the long run, but he needed Aizen's knowledge and expertise. "I know next to nothing about this Soul King. It must be something bad if Aizen is so intent on killing it. But I wonder why he doesn't want to tell me anything. There's something strange about all of it, but I guess I have no choice but to go along with this for now. I doubt he'll be dumb enough to betray me again anytime soon after this," Ichigo speculated as he and Aizen left the Manos forest. As they arrived back on the surface of Hueco Mundo, Ichigo took a deep breath and looked at the moon, transcendent being Huh. Maybe that's what Aizen wants. A resounding boom erupted in the distance, breaking Ichigo and Aizen from their awkward silence. Both of their heads darted towards the outskirts of Hueco Mundo, where they could see a massive pillar of pink spiritual energy radiating on horizon. It seemed to be extremely far away in the opposite direction of Las Noches. The orange-haired Arrancar glanced over at Aizen. I sense a hollow, but what is that other spiritual signature? That spiritual power doesn't feel like a Shinigami's, Aizen noted. Go tell my Vasto lords that I'm investigating it, Ichigo gestured. Aizen gave him a quizzical look. You want me to return without you? They might see that as suspicious. Somebody needs to tell them why I'm not back yet. Now do what you're told and go, Ichigo said annoyed. Very well. Good luck, Aizen nodded before heading in Las Noches direction. A considerable distance away. Arriving at the scene of what Ichigo could only assume was a battle, he noticed a peculiar sight. Collapsed on the ground were the Arrancars he previously encountered a while back. Dordani, Circucci, and Gantenban. They were all wounded and unconscious from what he could tell. Following the pink glow, his eyes widened in surprise as he noticed Nalil, standing there in her released form. She appeared heavily wounded, but was the last one of them standing. His eyes shifted over towards her opponent. Ichigo cocked his head confused. Humans. What? They definitely aren't Shinigami. What the hell are they doing in Hueco Mundo? Standing across from the wounded Arrancars were what appeared to be two human women dressed in white. Both of them had dark hair and blue eyes. One had a playfully bored expression on her face, and was standing further back, whilst the other appeared to be the one fighting. The one in front had a uniform-styled white outfit, and a white hat that somehow reminded Ichigo of a sailor. He blinked several times trying to process exactly what he was looking at. The battlefield surrounding them looked heavily scarred and was still burning. Ichigo cautiously and stealthily got a closer look. So Arrancar, are you done wasting my time? You don't have a choice, you bitch, you're coming with us. The woman with the hat declared. Nell grimaced painfully. Your invasion of Hueco Mundo won't go unnoticed. This is our world. You don't belong here, Quincy. Quincy, Ichigo thought shocked. Ha, your world. That's a joke. Everything His Majesty wants is technically already his. You pathetic hollows are no match for the Wandenreich. Not to mention, it's not like any of you rule this barren wasteland anyway. Ha ha. The woman laughed. The girl behind her chuckled. She was stronger than the others though, Bambi-chan. Who this slut? She's already beaten. I should just put her out of her misery, the woman with the hat spat. Nell glared at them angrily. Lanzador Verde. Chucking her lance at remarkable speed, she narrowly clipped the front woman, causing her to stagger slightly off balance. Before the woman could react, Nell kicked her in the face with one of her hooves. The Quincy woman hissed angrily and immediately stomped the ground, causing a series of explosions to erupt all around them. You just don't give up, do you, bitch? The woman shouted, annoyed as she absorbed Reishi from the air. Nell quickly retrieved her lance and ran in for a sweep. The woman leapt over the attack, and formed a blade out of Reishi in her hand. She narrowly parried Nell's ferocious jab, and followed up with a counter-strike. Satisfied by her attack, the sadistic dark-haired woman barely had time to fall back as Nell unleashed a powerful pink arrow at her. Watch out, Bambi-chan, the other girl shouted as if amused by the battle. The woman delivered a powerful series of slashes against the weakened Nell and soon brought the Arrancar down. Ichigo was shocked. For somebody as strong as Nell to be downed like that, who are these people? Nell wasn't down for long, as she channeled spiritual power over her lance and charged the Quincy again. The woman smiled as she formed a large orb of Reishi and chucked it at the incoming Arrancar. Despite the magnitude of the explosion, Nell barreled through it, and managed to stab the Quincy with her lance. It seemed to catch the Quincy off guard, giving Nell the time to pull her weapon back for another jab. Uck! You damn bitch! The woman with the hat screeched. Before her follow-up attack could hit, Nell's lance was diverted by a large arrow from the other woman. Ichigo's eyes darted over and saw her holding an energy bow of some kind. Before Nell could recover, the woman with the hat swung her Reishi sword and disarmed the Arrancar. She delivered a series of devastating cuts and slashes, bringing Nell down again. Adding to overkill, the woman grinned maliciously as she formed another couple of Reishi bombs, igniting Nalil in a massive series of explosions. After it subsided, Nell was remarkably still standing. Though, she looked heavily injured now. Ichigo gritted his teeth. I need to get over there. Ichigo's eyes widened as he saw Nell's release form dissipate. Now back to normal, she staggered weakly as she tried to hold on to her sealed sword. The black-haired Quincy with the hat scowled. I don't like the way you keep glaring at me. I think I'll just kill you, and take the others. Deciding to finally intervene, Ichigo appeared in front of Nell via Sonido just in time to stop the woman from striking the wounded Nalil down. Nell herself gasped in disbelief, as the flowing orange hair in front of her quickly caught her attention. She looked at the stranger now in front of her, and noticed his clothes and the missing horn. She could barely believe her eyes and spoke weakly, Ichigo. Holding the Quincy's wrist in his hand, Ichigo slowly turned back and looked Nell in the eyes. Nalil. Several tears leaked from her eyes as she saw his face for the first time. You're an Arrancar. Yeah, he smiled, before shifting his attention back towards the cruel Quincy woman in front of him. Both she and her companion were completely shocked by Ichigo's arrival. The one directly in front of him stared with widened eyes. Where did you come from? I didn't even sense you. Before she could get her answer, Ichigo backhanded the Quincy to the ground. His strong arming display must have been quite the feat, since the other girl gasped, Bambietta. A red mark covered the downed Quincy's face as she looked up in disbelief. You fucker. Did you just slap me? Ichigo. Wah, Nell began, but was silenced by his look. Stand back, Nell. I'll deal with these intruders, Ichigo said calmly. Intruders? Bah, just who the fuck do you think you are, asshole? The dark-haired woman demanded. The wound inflicted on her by Nell from earlier seemed to be healing up for some reason, much to Ichigo's curiosity. Bambi-chan, he's cute, isn't he? I love your hair, Mr. Arrancar, the other girl said as she ran in closer. Bambietta stood up and glared at her companion. Shut up, Giselle, you whore. Ichigo gave the women an intense glare. What are two Quincy's doing in Hueco Mundo? His question was quickly answered by Nell. They're trying to abduct Arrancars for their army. Your army, is that right? Ichigo asked threateningly. Bambietta glared at him. Yeah, that's right, the almighty Yhwach wants Hueco Mundo for himself. He needs Arrancars for his army. They're quite useful since they require almost no training. Yhwach, who is that? Ichigo asked. I don't have to tell you a damn thing. You're going to die for hitting me, she said sadistically. Forming several massive reishi orbs, she immediately launched them at Ichigo. Ichigo reached up and stabbed his hand with his own horn. The sight seemed unusual to the two Quincy's as they stared in confusion. Holding up his bloody hand, Ichigo charged his spiritual energy, Gran Rey Cero. Bambietta and Giselle both gawked for a brief moment before a tremendously powerful white and red Cero fired from Ichigo's hand. The beam completely obliterated everything in its path. Blasting the reishi orbs back, it ignited the desert in a chain of explosions as Ichigo blasted it against the Quincy's. After the blast subsided, he was surprised to see them both alive, but their formerly crisp white outfits looked visibly seared, and Bambietta's hat was even gone. They were both covered in some type of blue-patterned glow, much to his confusion. Ichigo stared surprised. What is that? I've never seen a hollow do something like that before, Giselle said with an interested tone. Despite the devastation of the attack, both Quincy's appeared relatively fine now as the blue-patterned glow faded from their bodies. Giselle appeared less concerned, but Bambietta was now glaring hatefully at him. He eyed them curiously. I'm surprised that didn't kill you. First you slap me, and then you ruin my outfit. You're even worse than that pompous bitch, Bambietta shrieked angrily as she pointed at Nell. You're starting to sound like Candy, Bambi-chan, the other woman laughed. The fact that they didn't even seem fazed greatly alarmed Ichigo. What am I dealing with here? A Cero like that should have killed them. Gigi, my golden buttons, even my hat. That's it, now I'm pissed. Bambietta screeched. Ichigo's sweat dropped. She's certainly got her priorities mixed up. Be careful, Ichigo. Don't underestimate them, Nell said worriedly. He grunted in response. Don't worry, I can handle them. Handle us? You'll handle us? Who the hell are you anyways? Bambietta demanded. Giselle giggled at her outburst. The other Arrancar called him Ichigo. Hey Ichigo. Giselle waved at him in an almost schoolgirl-friendly fashion. What's wrong with her? Ichigo wondered aloud. Without warning, Bambietta began firing waves of explosive reishi orbs. The woman was furious in her attempts to hit him. Every one of her explosive orbs missed him, as he sped around with unseen speed. It greatly annoyed her, causing the furious Quincy to become even more angry. Come on, stop trying to hit me and hit me, Ichigo taunted. It seemed to fuel her rage as the explosions grew larger and larger. Finally she stopped and glared at him incredulously. Ichigo landed in front of her again and glared back, is that all you got? He's so fast isn't he, Bambi-chan? I'll bet he's strong too. Giselle chirped in an eerily excited way. Ichigo raised a brow at her. She sounds like a ditz, but is probably the smarter one, though the other woman stopped. I wonder what she'll do next. You think you're tough, huh, Ironclar? Why don't you show me that release of yours, Bambietta said darkly. Why would she want that, if she's not even landing a hit against my normal form? Ichigo thought curiously. That's cute, Ichigo laughed. He thinks you're cute, Bambi-chan. Giselle said amused, I'm so jealous. Maybe he will release for you. Ichigo deadpanned, that's not what I meant. Sure it is, you should tell us who you are, and I'll convince Bambi-chan to be nice, Giselle interrupted. Bambietta gave him a serious look. Ichigo, huh? You're not easy to kill, I'll give you that much. What were your names again? Bambi, Giselle, Ichigo said uncertainly. It's Bambietta Basterbine, this is Giselle Gewel. We're Sternritters, now who the hell are you? She demanded. Ichigo Kurosaki, but I'm known by my other name around here, White, he replied casually. Bambietta scoffed at him. What kind of name is White? I think I'll just call you bitch instead. How original. Now I can take after you, Ichigo chuckled. PFF'd. Well, aren't you a smartass? She shook her head. Ichigo shrugged. What the hell are Sternritters anyway? Bambietta grinned proudly as she pointed towards herself, elite Quincy's. I wouldn't expect some primitive, idiotic hollow to understand. I don't know where you came from, but you're not going to stop us from taking these Ahrenkars back to the Wandenreich. How do you figure? You're not really putting up much of a challenge, the hollow insulted her. The Sternritter's grin immediately faded. I get off on beating down arrogant bastards like you. What did she just say? Ichigo thought distracted. We should recruit him, Bambi-chan. His Majesty would love an Ahrenkar this powerful. Plus then we could have fun with him, the cheerful, but creepy Quincy noted. Ichigo shot them down immediately. That's not going to happen. Like I'd spare you after what you did anyway. Bambietta hissed as she charged with her reishi sword. Ichigo swiftly drew his sealed Zanpakuto and countered her easily. She struggled against his vastly superior strength. What's with this guy? She exclaimed annoyed. Her moment of distraction came at a price, as Ichigo stabbed the woman straight through her shoulder. Ichigo pulled it out and was about to deliver another blow, before she grabbed his arm and grinned wickedly. An explosion quickly caught both of them in its wake, actually burning off the sleeve of Ichigo's sword arm. The Quincy stared at him shocked. That didn't blow your arm off. You must have one tough hero. I guess I have no choice. Ichigo watched curiously as the dark-haired woman grinned at him. She slowly removed a glove off of her hand, and soon after, all the nearby reishi in the air began to cluster around her. Vollständig, she said excitedly. Ichigo's eyes widened in shock as literal wings formed over her back. Some strange emblem-shaped halo formed over her head as well. Ichigo could sense a tremendous difference in her power level compared to before and stared almost in awe. I've never seen this before. Her sword appeared much more concentrated now and visibly larger as reishi focused over its edge. Bambietta eagerly flew in at surprising speed as she began to assail Ichigo. He swiftly avoided most of her attacks, but was forced to block several. The sheer difference in her power level seemed akin to a Shinigami releasing a Bankai. She's taking me seriously now, Ichigo noticed as he narrowly avoided a reishi bomb that dwarfed anything she previously used against him. Die! The angelic-looking Quincy howled as she swooped in for another round of attacks. Her charge was short-lived as she saw Ichigo raise his sword parallel to the ground, protect Zangetsu. A pillar of black and red spiritual energy exploded forth, forcing everyone back from the sheer pressure alone. Bambietta grinned at the sight. There's his release. You finally got him to release on you. Giselle cheered. Bambietta briefly glanced over. Gigi, you're shameless. After the energy subsided, Ichigo now stood in front of them in his release form. Giselle frowned at it and pouted. Ah, we can't see his face anymore. The other woman eyed it somewhat cautiously. Quite the resurrection. Maybe I will take you back, assuming you're not dead before I have my fun with you. The fearsome Arrancar growled menacingly. I'm done wasting my time with you two. With both of his blades, Ichigo swung forth, Getsuga Jujisho. Bambietta was clearly not expecting the exponential difference in Ichigo's power as she attempted to counter it with a colossal bomb. Giselle chose to intervene as well, Heilig File. Firing a large holy arrow in addition with Bambietta's superbomb, she hoped it would cancel out Ichigo's attack. Unfortunately for Bambietta, it didn't. The cross-shaped black Getsuga fired through it in mere seconds, completely blasting her away. Giselle gasped surprised, Bambi-chan. Before Giselle could even react, Ichigo attempted to cut her down. Despite his attack, he watched with horror as the fatal cut didn't kill her. The girl's blood covered his body much to her satisfaction. You're mine now, Ikai go. Her playful expression soon turned into an evilly creepy grin. Kill her, Giselle pointed to Nell. Ichigo looked at the Quincy incredulously. Why would I do that? The unusual Quincy tilted her head confused. That's strange. It doesn't affect you. What are you talking about? Ichigo asked. You must be really powerful, maybe the effect is delayed. Kill her, the creepy Quincy pointed at Nell again. How are you still alive? I practically cut you in half. Ichigo shook his head. The strange woman traced a finger over some of her blood and flicked it at Ichigo, sending a few spurts directly at his face. She cocked her head as if fascinated by his reaction. Weird. Ichigo swung to decapitate her, but she narrowly ducked. He watched confused as the creepy Quincy began to casually walk towards him. He ceased his follow-up swing momentarily, wondering what she was doing. He attempted to stab Giselle with one of his blades, but it appeared ineffective. All it did was cover him in more of her blood. I can't kill her like a normal human. What's with this freak of a girl anyway? Ichigo thought, somewhat disturbed. Giselle smiled at his reaction. You're covered in my blood, and it still doesn't affect you. What the hell's wrong with you? He asked. The unusually weird Quincy stared at him with an unfazed grin. That's not a nice thing to say. He pulled his sword back and stared at her seriously. Get away from me. He formed a sarrow between his horns and was about to fire it at her. However, before he could fire his sarrow, he heard a sharp whistle. Hey! You fire that sarrow, and I'll kill her. Ichigo kept his sarrow charged, but glanced over and saw Bambietta was back. She had her blade pressed against Nell's throat, holding the weakened Arrancar on her knees. The Quincy's wings were gone, and she looked roughed up from his attack. Make one move and I'll kill your little girlfriend here, she threatened. Sure you will, Ichigo said sarcastically. Bambietta's face was almost sadistic. Don't think I won't. You obviously cared enough about her to get in our way in the first place. I know you won't do anything stupid to get her killed. Despite the situation, Nell remained silent. She shook her head, as Ichigo slowly turned around. His sarrow began to recede, much to Bambietta's satisfaction. Yeah, that's right. I knew you would listen to me. Now return to normal too. I've had about enough of these crazy Quincies, Ichigo thought as he played along with Bambietta's request. His release form resealed back into his Zanpakuto, which he immediately sheathed. You come with us, and I'll let her go, deal? Bambietta said as she brought the reishi blade closer to Nell's neck. She jerked her head, signaling for Giselle to restrain Ichigo somehow. The bloody Quincy wrapped herself around one of his arms and tilted her head against Ichigo's shoulder. Don't we make a good couple, Bambi-chan? Take this seriously, Gigi. Bambietta shook her head. Giselle continued to grin in her wicked way as she licked Ichigo's now exposed sword arm. Ichigo swung his fist to get the Quincy off of him, but stopped as Bambietta pulled Nell's head back. I wouldn't do that if I were you. What's your answer, Ichigo? Looking over at Bambietta seriously, he had no choice but to ignore the Quincy latched onto his arm. This day just gets worse and worse, Ichigo thought, annoyed. At least wait until we bring him back before doing all of that. This is serious, Gigi, Bambietta said as she noticed the blood covering both of them. Let's make his girlfriend jealous, Giselle said enthusiastically. Nell's eyes darkened slightly at the comment as she mean-mugged Giselle. Bambietta seemed to notice it and smiled. I don't think she would like that, Gigi. Ichigo. Don't worry about me, just kill them, Nell interrupted before Bambietta pulled her hair back again. The dark-haired Quincy huffed. I don't feel like standing here all day, what's your answer, pretty boy? Temporarily distracted from the comment, Ichigo was caught off guard by a wet sensation across his face. His eyes widened considerably as Giselle licked his cheek with a suggestive grin. There's no way in a million years that I'd agree to go with or be alone with this crazy woman, Ichigo thought. He couldn't exactly throw her off and risk Nell getting her throat slashed. Realizing he had to act fast, Ichigo calmly waited for his opportunity. That's a good deal, he said slowly, causing Bambietta to lower her guard slightly. Giselle appeared excited as she got way too close for his comfort. But I've got a better one, Ichigo countered, before appearing directly behind Bambietta. She could barely believe his reaction time, as he brought her own blade against her throat. Giselle plopped to the ground, in Ichigo's remarkable burst of speed and looked up confused. How's about you two leave, and I'll spare your lives, take a message to this Yhwach guy. Tell him that Hueco Mundo already has a king, and I'm not interested in working for some Quincy, Ichigo stated. What, you're Hueco Mundo's king? Bambietta stuttered, completely surprised by the revelation. Giselle's eyes lit up. Ooh. I call first dibs, Bambi-chan. Do something, Gigi, she said urgently as Ichigo pressed the blade closer to her throat. If you let her go, I'll be your hostage, Giselle volunteered way too eagerly for his tastes. The very suggestion put a chill up his spine, causing him to shoot down the suggestion immediately. You're both leaving, or you're both dying. You've won this round. We'll leave, I surrender, Bambietta sighed in acceptance. Nell frowned. Is it really a good idea to let them go, Ichigo? Just this once, I'll spare you Quincy's. Go tell this Yhwach that Hueco Mundo is mine, and he can fight me for it. If he comes after my Arrancars again, I'll murder all of you, Ichigo said darkly as he released Bambietta. She ran over to Giselle and stared at Ichigo incredulously. Why didn't you tell us you were the king of Hueco Mundo? Since when has this place had a king? Get out of here before I change my mind, Ichigo gestured for them to leave. Bambietta scoffed at him. You're going to regret sparing our lives, Yhwach will crush you. Let him try, the Hollow King laughed. Bambietta gave Ichigo one last look. You haven't seen the last of us. I'll get you back for this, mark my words. As they took their leave, Giselle winked at him. Once he kills you, I'll make you my toy. Though it'd be more fun if you were willing. Something about her comment was a bit disturbing to him, but Ichigo shook it off as he finally went over to make sure Nell was all right. The aquamarine-haired Arrancar took a deep breath. I'm surprised you let them go, they would have killed me. I'm sorry I let that happen to you, Nell. I just wanted a better idea of what kind of enemies these Quincy's were. Plus I held back so I wouldn't hurt any of you guys. Ichigo pointed towards the other downed Arrancars. Ichigo extended his hand with a sad smile. It's good to see you again. You too, Nell replied somewhat shamefully as she took his hand. You're not really seeing me at my best though. It's all right, I was going to look for you guys eventually. You should come live in Las Noches with the rest of us. Huh, so, you really are king of the Hollows then? What about Barragan? She asked surprised. It's a long story, but I challenged him in Las Noches in front of half of Hueco Mundo, and defeated him. I spared him and now we work together, Ichigo explained. Nell's face lit up. That's amazing, you really did make something of yourself, didn't you? I guess I was wrong, you are the strongest Hollow. Not just in power, but in spirit as well. I've never heard of something like that happening before. No Nell, I was wrong. I shouldn't have dismissed you so easily, I'm sorry for that, he sighed. The sea-green-haired Hollow smiled weakly. It's in the past now, we'd be happy to join your cause. Are they going to be okay? Ichigo asked looking over the downed Kryvern. Nell nodded. I can heal them before we go. So how did you guys encounter those Quincy's anyway? Ichigo asked. Nell frowned. Supposedly they've been growing in strength and they want to conquer Hueco Mundo. I'm glad to hear you're in charge now, because I wasn't sure how we could stop them otherwise. They're more powerful than I expected them to be. That creepy woman I kept trying to cut down wouldn't even die. She seemed awfully intent on getting blood on me. Ichigo shook his head. The female Arrancar gave Ichigo a nervous laugh. About her. What is it, Nell? Ichigo asked. Actually, never mind, she said nervously as she looked away. As if that situation wasn't strange enough, now Nell's acting weird about it. Ichigo thought, shaking his head. So how did you become an Arrancar? Nell changed the subject right away. I'll tell you about it on the way back. Let's heal them up and get to Las Noches, Ichigo replied. Standing close to the Karakura town graveyard, two individuals traded concerned expressions as they witnessed Yuzu and Aryu leaving with the mysterious white-garbed strangers. One of them was a fairly tall blonde man adorned in a button-down shirt and dress pants. To his side stood a much shorter blonde-haired girl with a red track suit on. She stared at the sight incredulously. Shinji, should we do something about that? Who are those people anyway? The blonde man frowned. That wouldn't be wise, Hiyori. I've seen a few of those guys poking around this city. We know almost nothing about them, plus, it might be dangerous if things get ugly and the Soul Society finds out we're here. We can't just hide forever though, she protested in annoyance. Shinji sighed. I know, but Urahara told us to keep a low profile. We shouldn't rush into things blindly. Plus, they're not Shinigami, so they don't really concern us. PFF, where's that good-for-nothing bastard, Urahara, anyway? We should see if he knows anything about these people, she suggested. Before he could reply, a third person landed behind them. They both turned around and noticed Love, who seemed a bit more serious than usual. He was quick to state his reason for arriving. Guys, all of the Shinigami in this city just got recalled back into the Soul Society. Apparently there's been an attack. What? Shinji asked, surprised. By who? I don't know. Possibly Aizen, Love said morbidly. Aizen's involved. Shinji gritted his teeth angrily. Hiyori seemed concerned. We need to see Urahara right away then. Maybe he knows what's going on. Love nodded. The others are already on the way. Urahara will explain everything once we're all there. Let's go then, Shinji said as he left without even waiting. Urahara shop Beneath the former captain's shop, the Visored were all gathered as they stood around Kazuki. Shinji, Hiyori, and Love arrived just in time to witness an opening Senkaimon and watched it curiously. Urahara, what's going on? Shinji demanded. Shinji, Hiyori, about time you guys showed up, Kensai sighed. We came as fast as we could, Shinji stated. Who's coming from the Soul Society? Hiyori asked immediately as she watched the opening doorway, confused. Lisa had her arms crossed and stared at the Senkaimon. Did you already send word to them? I was under the impression this was going to be between us, Urahara. Who was coming through the Senkaimon? Hachi wondered aloud. Kazuki glanced back and shrugged. Hey now, relax guys. I don't know who it is, but if they're coming directly under the shop, then I'd assume it's Isshin. If so, then you got here just in time. Perfect timing actually. Maybe now we can find out what's going on. Maybe he has news about what happened then, Lisa said hopefully. Before Kazuki could say anything else, Isshin came out of the Senkaimon with Rukia at his side. Shinji stared at Isshin surprised. Captain Shiba. So they did reinstate you. Many of the Visoreds recognized Isshin and stared intently, waiting for him to give the news. Isshin looked around surprised. Kazuki. What are they all doing here? I heard about the recall of the Soul Society's forces, so I figured I'd gather them in case you guys needed backup, Urahara said coolly. Is that why you called us all here? Why do I get the feeling you knew he was going to come back? Kensai frowned. Hiyori glared at Urahara seriously. You seriously expect we would fight for the Soul Society? Not exactly, but I knew that the Soul Society calling back all its captains was a serious deal. I've caught some passing rumors, Isshin, but what happened exactly? Urahara questioned. White attacked the Soul Society with the help of Captains Aizen, Ichimaru, and Tusen. He brought 2 other hollows in the attack as well. Also, White is Ichigo, Isshin explained. Kazuki seemed genuinely surprised for the first time in his life. What? Really? As in your dead son, Ichigo? How did you find out? He fought the Captain Commander on top of Sokyoku Hill, and gathered us all there. Then when we thought we had him cornered, Aizen stole your Hogyoku from Lieutenant Kuchiki here, and declared himself our enemy. Ichigo was an Arankar. His mask dissipated and I saw his face. His eyes were just like that hollow from over 20 ago. They've fused souls, Isshin said morbidly. The Visored stared horrified by the news. Hiyori deadpanned. A hollow fought the Captain Commander. Well, if that hollow is your son, then I'm sure you've already figured out what that means. Urahara replied seriously. He's part Quincy too. It's remarkable that he managed to evolve into an Arankar in such a short time. I had my suspicions, but I never imagined such an evolution was possible. I know what you're thinking, Kazuki, Isshin sighed. I should have seen it coming, it's just hard to imagine. As if that wasn't bad enough, Sosuke Aizen chose today to betray us as well. The Seraiti is still recovering from the chaos. So Aizen was involved with White. Interesting, Urahara thought. It seems Aizen finally showed the Soul Society his true colors, Shinji said seriously. Isshin nodded. Yeah, by the way Kazuki, the Captain Commander pardoned you. Aizen has the Hogyoku now, and they need to know what we're up against. They need your expertise. They do, huh? Kazuki frowned. Yeah, I'll go talk to them then. I mean so long as I'm pardoned and all. By the way, did he say they were pardoned too? The man pointed at the former captains and lieutenants. I don't know, but considering the chaos we're dealing with right now, I doubt the Soul Society is in any position to turn away help, the dark-haired captain stated. What makes you think we want to go back anyway? They condemned us for something that wasn't our fault. Hiyori growled. Shinji was quick to silence her. We'll go talk to the old man. Somehow the idea of telling him, I told you so, is sounding pretty good right about now. Who are all of these people anyway? Rukia spoke up for the first time. I'd rather not tell the whole story twice. Just wait until we all get back to the Soul Society, Kazuki replied. Before we go, Kazuki, how's Yuzu? Has she been doing all right? Isshin asked. Kazuki shrugged. As much I've seen, yeah, but she's almost never here these days. I saw her earlier this morning, and she seemed all right. She's been spending time with some guy from what Ururu said. A guy? Do you know who? He asked seriously. Urahara nodded. Yeah, Rukan's son, Uryu. You didn't think that was worth mentioning. Has anything strange happened with her recently? Why would she be around him? Isshin asked. Well, I went ahead and asked him about it, and he said she was in good hands. So I've just been giving her space, Kazuki said as he fanned his face. Isshin narrowed his gaze. Do you think it's possible that? The other man nodded. Definitely a possibility, but Rukan didn't say anything about it. You might want to ask him yourself. Go back to the Soul Society without me, I need to investigate this. Yuzu's safety is my #1 priority right now, Isshin explained. Sure thing. Come on guys, let's go see the old guy, Urahara waved as he walked towards the Senkaimon. Rukia stared at Urahara suspiciously. Why was that Hogyoku thing in my body? Oh that, well I'll explain the whole story once we get there, Kazuki said. Wandenreich Palace. Shadow Realm Yuzu and Uryu both followed Hashwolf up a large set of stairs. Their journey to this new and unusual destination was not very pleasant. Neither one had any idea where it even was or how they got there. Candace strutted behind them bored. Yuzu would occasionally glance back and notice the woman stare at her smugly. What's she staring at? The girl thought, intimidated. Uryu on the other hand was examining every detail of their surroundings with hyper-analytical awareness. Upon entering the large and terrifying ice palace, they followed Jugram down a large hallway and before long found themselves in what appeared to be a massive assembly chamber. They walked down the middle of some kind of formation with quincies on either side. Everyone there was dressed in white, and faced forward, ignoring the newcomers. Sitting atop a floating throne near the front, was a black-robed man with dark hair and what Yuzu thought were evil-looking mutton chops. He had a middle-aged appearance and was beyond intimidating. He looked down at the two of them as if they were ants. Jugram, I thought I asked for a Ryu. Yet you brought me a girl as well. The man on the throne said. Hashwolf nodded casually. Yes, your majesty, she was with him at the time. She is a quincy as I'm sure you've noticed by now. I believed you would find an appropriate solution for her life. Indeed, Yawach smiled evilly as he levitated down from his throne and stood across from the blonde man. He made his way over to a stage-like area and looked over the countless quincies below. Near the front, many Sternritters were present in the room. Ryu looked around cautiously and could barely describe the vast array of the diverse, powerful quincies. There was easily over 20 of the Sternritters present. They were lined up in the front row ahead of the normal troops and all had mixed expressions. Is this some kind of assembly or something? It looks as if he was waiting for us to arrive, Ryu thought curiously. His thoughts were immediately confirmed when somebody spoke up. One man with a reddish-pink mohawk had an annoyed look on his face. Was this why we had to gather up here? Who the hell are these people? Nobody said anything in response to his comment, likely out of fear of Yawach. Hashwolf glanced over at the man stoically. You should be silent in formation, Baz B. The man immediately nodded at Jugram much to Yuryu's surprise. Pushing his observations out of mind, he stepped forward, towards Hashwolf's side. What did you want to speak to us about? The Quincy Emperor motioned for Ryu to come forward. Come up here, Ryu, I have been keeping my eyes on you for quite some time. You possess great power and I would like to offer you a place in the Wandenreich. I appreciate the offer, your majesty, but what good am I to you exactly? Ryu replied respectful but curiously. You are the last Quincy to survive in this world. You possess a power capable of surpassing even my own. It is because of this, that I not only offer you a place in the Wandenreich, but I name you as my successor, Yawach announced. Wait, Baz B outburst, but before he could say or do anything, Hashwolf stopped him. The blonde turned and stared at him seriously. Keep your objections to yourself. Is there a problem? Yawach asked. No, your majesty. The blonde man shook his head. Please continue. The Quincy Emperor grinned. You will all see Ryu Ishida's power for yourselves when the time comes. Until then, pay him your utmost respect. The time is drawing near for our purge of the Shinigami. There was an eerily uneasy tension in the air as everyone stared at Ryu incredulously. It was clearly evident that they were probably wondering what made him so special in the eyes of their emperor. This guy that just showed up moments ago was immediately named their lord's successor. Seeing the position he was in, Ryu bowed his head briefly. I can't say no to something like that. Thank you. Yuzu eyed him surprised. Why's Ryu-kun not turning them down? What's going on here? The almighty Quincy focused his gaze down towards Yuzu now, and brought a hand to his chin. As for you, girl, state your name to the Wandenreich. Why Yuzu Kurosaki, she said timidly. The intense stares from the terrifying strangers was enough to incite a near panic. She remained calm on the outside, but inwardly, Yuzu was trembling. Yawach grinned. I find you most curious. You are a new Quincy, somewhat similar to Ryu here. I sense you have great power as well. You are also welcome to join the Wandenreich. Well, I just want to go home, Yuzu found the courage to say. She immediately regretted her comment as many Sternritters focused serious glares on her. Yawach chuckled at her comment and waved off the intensity from his Sternritters. Ah, but my dear sweet girl, you are home. Jugram, see to it that she receives the proper care. I would like the girl to be trained. She's already under my tutelage. Ryu tried to ease Yuzu's panic mood, and I can look after her. The girl is not to be harmed. Those of you that care to spare your time, should initiate her. Now you are all dismissed. Yawach waved them off. The formation of Quincy's all saluted him before dispersing. The almighty emperor himself departed for his personal chambers, leaving Ryu and Yuzu alone and surrounded by the Sternritters. Ryu, go to His Majesty's chamber. Yuzu will be under my care from here on. Hashwolf dismissed him. The Kurosaki girl shot a worried look over at her friend who had no choice but to obey the command. He gave Yuzu a comforting nod. I'll come back to check on you. Okay, she said somewhat nervously. As Ryu left, Hashwolf glanced down at her curiously. I'm surprised the master had such an interest in you, though I'm sure it is not unfounded. Come with me, and I will show you to your room. Before Hashwolf and Yuzu could depart, they heard two loud women come barreling up the stairs. Candace looked over with widened eyes. Bambietta. What happened to your uniform? The remaining Sternritters in the room stared at the bloody Giselle and burnt Bambietta confused. Candace put her hands on her hips. Where's your hat? What the hell happened to you sluts? Baz B questioned immediately. Bambietta scoffed at him. Fuck off, we ran into some trouble. I'll say, you missed the big assembly, Candace smirked. Another Sternritter with shorter blonde hair and a hood interrupted their conversation. How was your trip to Hueco Mundo? You find any Arancars? Shut up, Gremmy. Yeah we did, she hissed. The young man had a smug look of amusement. Didn't bring them back I see. I didn't realize you two would have such a hard time with hollows. Maybe Hashwolf should have sent somebody more competent. Did you do anything relevant while you were there? One of the other Sternritters asked. He resembled a mad scientist. We met Hueco Mundo's king. Giselle spoke up excitedly. Every Sternritter in the room piped up interested. Baz B stared at Giselle seriously. What? Their king. Hollows have a king. Yeah, he's this super powerful Arankar. He showed up out of nowhere before we could abduct this pack, Bambietta explained. Jugram narrowed his gaze. Does he have a name? He said he was called White, but his name is Ichigo Kurosaki, Bambietta stated. Yuzu's eyes lit up with disbelief. Ichigo. Bambietta shot a glare towards Yuzu. Who the hell is the girl, anyway? She's our new recruit, Yuzu Kurosaki, Hashwolf confirmed. Wait a minute, Ichigo Kurosaki. Candace gasped. The lime blonde shot her gaze towards Yuzu immediately. Isn't that your dead brother's name? Wait, what? Baz B half choked. Hashwolf stared at Yuzu seriously. Your brother is a hollow. Quincy's aren't capable of turning into hollows. If Ichigo-sama's a Quincy then that might be why my blood didn't affect him. He was immune to it, Giselle interrupted. She had an eagerly excited face at the revelation as her eyes bored into Yuzu. The confirmation behind her comment was shocking. Hashwolf cocked his head. A hollow Quincy, that is unheard of. Bambietta locked gazes with Yuzu angrily. So she's his sister. Start talking. Back off Bambietta. His Majesty has ordered that nobody touch her, Candace interrupted. The dark-haired Quincy grinned sadistically. HMPH, you and me are going to have a little talk here in a bit, Yuzu Kurosaki. Ichigo is White. Yuzu shook her head confused. That's impossible though. Bambietta gave her an incredulous look. What? You didn't know your brother was a hollow? And no, Yuzu said quietly as she avoided the intimidating woman's gaze. Well, he had pretty orange hair and these yellow-black eyes. So cute, Giselle said as if daydreaming about him. Bambietta rolled her eyes. Screw that bastard. I'm surprised you didn't, Gremmy commented with a smug grin. Ignoring his comment, Bambietta turned towards Jugram. What are we going to do about this, Hashwolf? That hollow sent us back to bring a message to the Wandenreich. He challenged us. He mocked our power. Maybe your power, Baz B muttered under his breath. Watch your tone, Bambietta. I will inform you. Watch and see what he decides. I've heard rumors about a powerful hollow called White. If he's actually the king of Hueco Mundo then we might have to delay our plans, Jugram replied calmly. Screw that. We need to get our army and conquer that place ASAP. Bambietta protested. Giselle was quick to notice Hashwolf's patience fading and interjected nervously. Aha, maybe we should get cleaned up Bambi-chan. Come on, I can't be the only person who thinks we should take Hueco Mundo right now. Bambietta ignored her companion. Gremmy laughed at her. You seem so eager to go back and get your ass handed to you again. I haven't seen Bambietta this worked up in a while, Baz B said. Yuzu tuned out the majority of their following arguments as tears fell down her face. She stood there frozen in disbelief. Oni-chan is king of the hollows. But how? Noticing her crying, Candace wrapped an arm around her. Hey, you mind if I get her a uniform, Hashwolf? He jerked his head. No, but mind yourself. It was clear to him that Candace wanted to get Yuzu away from the arguing Sternritters for some reason. Likely because Bambietta was mouthing off death threats. The young Kurosaki teen looked at Candace uncertainly as the blonde led her away. After leaving the large area, they found themselves in a hallway walking together in silence. Candace looked down at her somewhat empathetically. Why are you crying? Oni-chan is alive, Yuzu smiled weakly. Her expression was a mixture of happiness and sadness. On one hand she was thankful that Ichigo was alive in some way, but on the other it was still a terrible shocker to learn that he was the king of the Hollows. Yuzu looked down. Papa doesn't know, it's going to break his heart if he learns Ichigo is white. What would Karen-chan say too? Candace sighed. Yeah, I guess so I don't know what they have planned for him, but if he's a Quincy like you, then I'm sure Yhwach might want to recruit him. We're already trying to recruit Arrancars for the Wandenreich anyway. What are Arrancars? Yuzu asked weakly between sobs. They're hollows with broken masks, they're practically human, and are pretty powerful according to our estimates. The higher-ups seem to think they would make good soldiers, Candace explained. So then, Ichigo is himself? Yuzu wondered. The lime blonde shrugged. I don't know, but if I was you, I wouldn't feel too upset about it. If he's really the Hollow King, then the rest of the Sternritters would love to capture him. I've heard all sorts of things about White, the Shinigami are terrified of him. Having him on our side would be like putting the final nail in their coffins. But Papa and Karen-chan are Shinigami though, Yuzu thought conflicted. Despite Candace's attempt to calm her down, she still felt terrible that her family all stood on opposing sides now. What am I going to do? The rest of their walk was spent in silence as Candace led Yuzu into a room. This is one of the spare chambers, I assume it's the one Hashwolf was going to put you in anyways. It was my old room. Here, let's find something appropriate for you to wear. Yuzu took time to examine her new room as Candace went digging through a wardrobe. It was rather large, and well furnished with pretty much anything somebody could ask for. She couldn't help but wonder if it was a standard room. Is everyone's room like this? Pulling out several outfits, Candace stopped momentarily and gave her an amused laugh. What? Hell no, the regular people don't get quarters these nice. Though since you're in the same boat as Ishida, I'm assuming they'll give you Sternritter status. Sternritter status, but why? She questioned. Candace stood up and carried over the selected uniform towards Yuzu. Who knows, but if that's the case, then I'll help train you if you'd like. Here, try this on, it should fit you perfectly. Yuzu stared at the uniform wide-eyed. I have to wear this. Aw, come on, it'll look good on you. Candace licked her lips as if excited about dressing Yuzu up. You can wear my old uniform. You can be like my little sister here. Why are you being nice to me? Yuzu asked. Candace was surprised by her blunt question. Because we're both Quincy's, and you need somebody to look after you. It's not easy being a girl around here, so you should stick with the rest of us. Jugram's good for training and probably has your best interest at heart, but I wouldn't spend time around anyone else until you've picked up the basics on being a Sternritter girl from me. Yuzu looked away skittishly. I don't see why you would think I am capable of becoming a Sternritter. I'm not that strong. Please. If the high and mighty Ishida felt you were worth his time, then you definitely are. Now put your new uniform on. Candace grinned, sticking out her tongue. After putting on the selected outfit, Yuzu blushed with embarrassment as she examined herself in one of the room's mirrors. I feel a bit exposed, Yuzu spoke up uncertainly as she looked over her uniform. Candace gave her a similar outfit to her own, much to Yuzu's dislike. She wore short white shorts, long boots, and a mid-topped uniform shirt. Thankfully, it didn't expose her chest, like Candace's, but Yuzu still felt a bit uncomfortable in it. The lime blonde beamed proudly. My old uniform looks good on you. Why is she doing this? I don't get it, Yuzu thought suspiciously. She smiled weakly at Candace. You don't think it looks a bit slutty? Shit, don't let Candace dress you up. Hey girl, come here. I'll get you a much more appropriate uniform, a voice sounded from the doorway. The Mohawk man from earlier strolled into the room and gave Candace a disapproving look. You bitches need to leave her alone. Bambietta's got enough whores in her posse. I'm not gonna let you corrupt some innocent girl. Baz B, you should just mind your own business. The girl doesn't concern you at all. Candace crossed her arms. He cocked his head. She's the Hollow King's sister, I think she does. Kurosaki here doesn't need you dumb sluts trying to doll her up. You don't have to listen to her, Kurosaki. I'll get you an actual uniform, if you'd prefer. Before Yuzu could agree to the man's suggestion, Candace spoke up first. She's quite content in her current uniform, so get lost, Baz B. By the way, nice outburst at the assembly earlier. You made yourself look like an idiot. Baz B glared at her. Well, call me crazy for wondering why some guy we've never met is going to be His Majesty's successor. Shouldn't you be somewhere else? Yuzu is under my tutelage and I have nothing left to say to you. Candace dismissed him. The man gave Yuzu a calm stare. If they start making you do weird shit, just come and tell me. Also, whenever you get bored of candy tits, you can always come to me for training if you want. I'd hate to see a nice girl like you end up being in Bambi's skank brigade. You done? Go away now, Candace said, annoyed. Despite Baz B's fiery attitude, Yuzu actually felt relieved that somebody other than Candace wanted to train her. I don't know what's going to happen. Ichigo, I wish you would just come and save me like you always used to. Yeah, I got a bone to pick with the boss anyways, Baz B said, annoyed as he made his way for the exit. Before he left, Candace spoke up. Hey, what did they decide on Hueco Mundo? Baz B glanced back and shrugged. Fuck if I know. Bambietta supposedly has a recording of White, that she took as they fled. Apparently everyone's watching it right now. What? I want to see. Candace ran to the door and pushed past him. Come on Yuzu, let's go see what your brother looks like. Somehow the idea seemed simultaneously amazing yet morbid to Yuzu. She quickly followed Candace past Baz B, who simply rolled his eyes. Damn bitch. After a quick run back into the main room, Candace and Yuzu noticed all the Sternritters standing around a large display monitor. Gremmy shook his head and laughed as he hit the replay. Wow, so you had enough time to record him, but not to fight back, huh? Yuzu glanced up at the screen and saw it replay. It started with Ichigo standing over another broken masked hollow. She could only assume it was an Aaronkar. The image zoomed in briefly and caught Ichigo's face. Bambietta spoke in the video. You haven't seen the last of us, I'll get you back for this, mark my words. Gremmy burst into laughing at the comment. Bahaha. He probably thought you were a joke, you sound so corny saying that. He paused the video directly over Ichigo's face and looked at it curiously. So this guy's the Hollow King. Why did you have a recording device anyway? One of the other Sternritters asked. He had black hair and a noticeably suave appearance. His nonchalant expression radiated a calm vibe. Who cares? The fact that she failed to bring him back is what's sad, Gremmy said, amused. Shut up. He's the Hollow King. It's not like I got beat by some regular Aaronkar. I wonder how well you'd fare against him. She hissed. Well, in her defense, at least we know what this guy looks like now, the black-haired Quincy said approvingly. Askin is right. A man with glasses and a mustache interjected. At least she took the initiative to bring this back. Gremmy shrugged. I'll make sure Hashwolf sends me next time. Askin noticed Yuzu and Candace back in the room and quickly waved them over. Hey new girl, does White look like your brother? Yuzu walked over in front of several of the Sternritters and stared at the image of Ichigo intently. There was no doubt in her mind it was Ichigo. His face looked aged, but seeing it with his long orange hair, she nodded in acceptance. Yes, Oni-chan is White. Wow, you say that like it's such a terrible thing, Giselle said cheerily. I'd kill to have an Oni-chan like that. I'll bet you would. Askin shook his head, amused. Giselle was right though. He is quite attractive, for a hollow. I'm surprised a hollow that pretty is their king. A busty woman added. She had long dark pink hair, and a tall, slender physique. Pretty. What the hell are you saying? Define. Pretty. Bambietta scowled. The woman sighed in response. Well, I don't know, he's pleasant looking. Not something you'd expect to see from a hollow of that caliber. Are we really going to stand around and comment on the aesthetics of a hollow's face? This is hardly relevant, Askin said with a casual sigh. Giselle grinned at the man. Nobody mentioned his aesthetics, but you're definitely right about that, Askin. So you like him too? The suave Sternritter chuckled. I don't even know the guy and I like him more than you, that much is true. But do you like him, Askin? That might explain your immunity to my charms, Giselle laughed suggestively. The man's mouth hung open for a moment as he looked at Giselle perplexed. You must be a genius, Giselle, truly I am in awe of your awareness. His tone was so obviously sarcastic that it caused the other Sternritter to frown. She stuck her tongue out at him. Ah, you're no fun anymore, Askin. Don't even act like you would say no. To who, him or you? The man checked cautiously. Both. At the same time, Giselle winked. Dead silence followed her comment. Askin gawked at Giselle for a moment before looking away. That's some imagination you've got, but I would prefer if you kept me out of your twisted fantasies. I'm just going to pretend that this awkward conversation didn't happen. Somehow I wouldn't doubt her logic is unfounded. I mean, if anybody could tell, it'd be her, Gremmy snickered. Now I see why you two aren't partnered together anymore, the evil scientist Sternritter said seriously. Askin put his hands behind his head and stretched. Yeah, whatever, Quilge, nobody asked you anyways. Shouldn't you be dissecting people right now? I'm surprised you two aren't best friends. You're so mean to me, Askin, you didn't used to be, Giselle pouted. Yeah, that was before I learned you were crazy, he dismissed. You two must have had a lot of fun working together, Quilge smiled evilly as he adjusted his glasses. If you say so, the man replied carelessly. What do you think? About White, Candace? You're usually never quiet about this sort of thing. The pink-haired Sternritter spoke up, shifting the room's attention. Candace glanced over at her embarrassed. Hey now, it doesn't matter what I think about him, Menina's. Menina's raised a brow. That's a first. For the first time in her life, Candace is speechless, another woman cut in. Well, to Yuzu she appeared less a woman and more a girl. She had short blonde hair and was noticeably short and flat. Candace forcibly laughed to hide her embarrassment, as if, I was just curious about what White looked like. Evidently, you came running back here fast enough, didn't you? Menina's laughed. Well, as entertaining as this girl talk has been, I'm going to go check on Jugram, Askin shrugged as he took his leave. Several other Sternritters followed his example, left without saying a word, leaving only a few behind. Right before Askin left the grand chamber, Giselle waved at him. You're welcome to join us whenever you want, Askin. The man visibly shuddered at the comment. I'll pass. He immediately left following his remark. Bambietta sent a sharp glare towards Yuzu and then Candace. You dressed her up already? Yeah, doesn't she look cute? Candace grinned. The dark-haired woman eyed Yuzu intently. Come with me, new girl, I wanna talk to you. Oh geez, not another one. Gremmy shook his head. As he took his leave, Gremmy noticed one of his fellow Sternritters staring at the image of Ichigo still. He had a smile etched across his face. Gremmy glanced up at him curiously. What's up, Gerard? You look worked up. The other Quincy in question was a large, muscular man with blonde hair and a headpiece-like mask greatly resembling a Nordic helmet. He gave Gremmy a brief look. Those are some intense eyes. I hope I get to fight him. As if you'd get near him. Before I finish the job, Gremmy shook his head as he walked past the large warrior. Gerard didn't even acknowledge Gremmy's comment, as the young blonde walked away. Gremmy stopped in his tracks and turned around to face the larger Sternritter with a murderous grin. You can't deny that I am the strongest Sternritter. The Nordic-like Sternritter turned his head briefly and smiled. Keep telling yourself that. Whatever, I'll show you one day, just how vast the difference in our power is. Gremmy got the final word in before departing. After he left, the muscular Sternritter turned back to look at the screen. A masked man standing next to Gerard nudged him curiously. So Hashwalth has postponed the invasion. What do you think about all of this? It would seem so, Gerard Valkyrie replied casually. I wouldn't worry about it, masked. We'll see Hueco Mundo very soon. As if White wasn't legendary enough, he's part Quincy too. There will be a lot of glory in battling him. I can't wait. The other man in question resembled a masked wrestler of some kind. He gave Gerard an uncertain look. What do you think about the Emperor's new successor, and the new girl? We'll see how the new guy proves himself when the time comes. Until then, I trust in His Majesty's decision. As for the girl, she's somebody else's problem, the large warrior noted. Let's get out of here. New girl, come with us, Bambietta gestured as she began to leave. Yuzu was dragged along with a large band of the Sternritter women shortly after. Bambietta strutted with a furious pep in her step as they exited the large room. Candace quickly caught up with the dark-haired woman, leaving Yuzu in the back with the other women. The short blonde one looked Yuzu over curiously. So, your name was Yuzu Kurosaki, right? Hi, I'm Liltato Lampert. I'm Menina's McAllen. The pink-haired woman followed. Yuzu couldn't help but like her uniform. She had a heart-shaped belt over what appeared to be an almost nurse-like coat. It greatly reminded her of the one she used to wear when helping her father at the clinic. Why can't I wear something like that instead? Yuzu thought in admiration. The distracting thoughts were one of the few things keeping her from freaking out at the moment. Giselle, who was still covered in dried blood, grabbed Yuzu's hand and held it as they walked. I'm Giselle Gewell, Bambi-chan's favorite girl. Yuzu immediately tried to pull her hand away, not feeling comfortable with Giselle's demeanor. It proved to be futile, unfortunately, which simply led her to ignore the situation. The Kurosaki teen-eyed Giselle nervously. She seemed pretty interested in Oni-chan. Gosh, I hope she doesn't mean romantically. Outside you watches chambers Baz B came charging down the hallway, but was immediately stopped as Hashwolf blocked his path. Where are you going, Baz B? Come on, Hashwolf, are you really going to accept what just happened with this guy? What makes him worthy to be the successor? I thought it would have been you at least. Baz B complained. The blonde man shook his head. You needn't concern yourself with His Majesty's choice. His will is the only thing that truly matters. I accept that, and so should you. You're a damn coward. If you're not going to do something about this, then I will. Maybe you don't want to be the successor. Fine, but I'll sooner take the throne myself before I let some stranger do it. Baz B said angrily. Calm yourself, and do what you're told, Hashwolf replied passively. Baz B glared. Get a grip, Jugram. Baz B is calm, can't you tell? A third voice sounded. Coming down the hallway, they noticed Askin with an amused look on his face. What are you getting at, Askin? Baz B demanded. The newcomer shrugged. You guys should really learn how to shut up about things. Questioning Yuwatch's decision is not in your best interest. I say let it go. It's obvious he chose that guy for a reason. Whatever, I'm out of here. Where's the new girl at anyways? Baz B questioned. Jugram eyed Baz B curiously. Why do you ask? I'm going to save her from the tramp squad, he said before walking off with an angry look on his face. Askin glanced over at Jugram curiously. What's with his sudden interest in the girl? The blonde man shrugged. I don't know, but at least it's something to occupy him while he cools off. Bambietta's room It didn't take long for them to get to where they were going, thankfully. After a short walk, they finally arrived at a large room, where Yuzu was dragged inside. Bambietta immediately threw off several articles of burnt clothing, but stopped as she watched Yuzu for a moment. You're that Hollow's sister, and you're one of us. HMPH, talk about strange, Bambietta sighed. Yuzu was quick to conclude that this dark-haired woman was not going to be as friendly as the others. Still, Jugram and Yuwatch both seem to be fine with you being here. Whatever. Do you know why I wanted to talk to you, Yuzu-chan? You don't mind if I call you that, do you? The Kurosaki girl said nothing in response, but a shiver ran down her spine as Giselle pushed her closer towards Bambietta. The Sternritter woman grabbed Yuzu's chin and turned her face on both sides as if examining the girl. She reached up and grabbed a handful of Yuzu's hair while doing so. I'll bet you'd make good leverage if I wanted to capture your brother. I wonder just how loyal you really are. Bambietta, Don't do that, Candace cut in, you're not allowed to hurt her. The sadistic woman smiled at Candace, hurt her. Don't be ridiculous, I'm not hurting you, my sweetheart. And no, Yuzu replied nervously. After a brief silence, Bambietta trailed her hand down over Yuzu's uniform and gave her a quick slap on the butt. You're a cute girl, I'll make sure you're well taken care of around here. So long as you know your place, and do what you're told. Yuzu half yelped but let out the deep breath she was holding as Bambietta eyed her uniform up and down. Stick with me, Yuzu-chan, and I'll make sure none of the guys around here do anything to you. Thanks, she said with a forced smile. Inwardly she was terrified of this woman. I'd rather take my chances with them, Yuzu thought worried. So, Yuzu-chan, before I get myself cleaned up, I was wondering what you could tell me about your big brother, Bambietta inquired. Her tone seemed less threatening and more curious now. Ichigo died a few years ago, I honestly haven't seen him since he was alive, Yuzu answered honestly. Liltato eased the tension as she joined the conversation. Don't mind Bambietta, she's probably just scoping him out if you know what I mean. Candace crossed her arms and grinned smugly. Looks like she's got a new target now, at least it'll keep her from killing all the studs around here like some kind of praying mantis. Bambietta sent the lime blonde a disapproving look. Maybe you should worry less about what I choose to do with my free time, Candace, plus it's not like you're a saint. It's just such a waste though, you're like some kind of predator, Bambi. I don't know who's worse, you or Giselle, Candace said shaking her head. There's still plenty of guys left around here. Candy-chan, you're such a horny slut, Giselle said amusedly. Candace rolled her eyes. That's not the point, Giselle, and you're more promiscuous than anyone here, so I don't want to hear it. Quote. Coming from Giselle, that's hilarious, Liltato shook her head at the other Quincy. You girls should really be more conservative, guys like that better, Menina's interjected shaking her head. The blonde crossed her arms. You act like I don't have standards, I don't do that stuff with just anybody. There was an awkward silence after her statement as everyone looked away. The Sternritter began to get flustered. Oh come on. It's been ages since I've done anything. Don't worry Candy-chan, I'll share Ichigo-sama with you, Giselle said with a peppy smile. Yuzu's eyes widened as she examined Candace's reaction. The lime blonde looked away, avoiding Yuzu's gaze. I doubt that would ever happen. I thought I already told you, Gigi, that guy's not interested in you. Plus, there won't be anything left of him, once I'm through with him, Bambietta said with a sadistic grin. Ah, Bambi-chan, please share him. Giselle pouted. Candace seemed annoyed by the comment. Maybe you two forgot, but he is the king of Hueco Mundo. I highly doubt any of us will be facing off against him. Plus, even if you could get your hands on him, what makes you think you could do anything? He obviously didn't have trouble throwing you two hustlers around. Maybe that's why she's so into this, Menina's giggled. Liltato nodded in approval. Regardless, Candace is right. A hollow whose part Quincy is not something you watch will overlook. Considering he's the king of Hueco Mundo, I doubt any of us will be fighting him personally. Even once we do beat him, it seems more than likely that His Majesty will simply capture Ichigo. So really you can't touch him, Bambietta. Yeah, I doubt you'll get the kind of payback you're thinking of, unless you had something else in mind. Menina's added with a smirk. Bambietta scowled at them but soon noticed Yuzu's uncomfortable expression. It was obvious that the teenager was not used to the profane way they were talking. The fact that it involved Ichigo made the subject matter 10 times worse. Examining her curiously, Bambietta smiled. Hey Yuzu-chan, what makes your brother tick anyway? What kind of a guy is he? What do you mean? She questioned uncertainly. The dark-haired Sternritter took off more of her clothes and fell back on her bed. What's he like and dislike? What kinds of girls does he go for? There was a very awkward silence as Yuzu blushed uncontrollably. I don't know, Oni-chan didn't really care about that kind of stuff, from what I remember. Why do you ask? Even better. I'll get my payback. The dark-haired woman grinned malevolently as she ignored Yuzu's question. Giselle smiled at her. I know that look, Bambi-chan. Anyways, Candace tried to change the subject since it was clearly not something Yuzu wanted to talk about. How do you girls like Yuzu's uniform? Doesn't she look like a younger version of me? If by younger, you mean a better, less trashy version of you, then yeah, Menina's said jokingly. Candace shot her a sharp look. Hey now, I didn't have these when I was her age. Plus who are you calling trashy? I look good, why not show myself off? Yuzu looked away embarrassed as Candace grabbed her chest and stuck her tongue out towards the other woman. Bambietta stared at Yuzu during this and smiled wickedly at the girl's innocent expression. How do you think Ichigo would react to seeing his cute little sister wearing that uniform? Bambietta teased. Bambietta, leave her alone, you're embarrassing her, Candace said disapprovingly. Hey whatever, I know a girl with a brother complex when I see one, Bambietta shrugged. Yuzu shrieked. WW what are you saying? What's that? Bambietta stood up and wrapped her arms around Yuzu before whispering in her ear. Yuzu's face quickly turned pink as she gasped. Giselle giggled at her reaction. Bambi-chan, you're so dirty. Hey sluts, get away from her, a voice came from the door. All of the women looked over shocked when they noticed a man standing at the door. It was none other than Baz B. Baz B, what do you want? Bambietta demanded as she immediately let go of Yuzu and covered parts of herself. Come on Kurosaki, you don't have to waste your time with these dirty bitches, Baz B directed towards Yuzu. The girl was shocked by his arrival, but not as much as the others were. Hey, we're not done talking to her, and Yuzu-chan is with us. Got that, what the hell is she to you anyways? Bambietta countered. The man bit his tongue and took a deep breath. It was obvious he was trying not to get angry. He cracked a fist at Bambietta, but ignored her as he tried to remain calm in front of Yuzu. You coming, girl? Yuzu immediately took her opportunity to get away from the Sternritter girls. Giselle and Bambietta in particular, frightened her. Before she could make it all the way, Candace quickly cut her off and got between Yuzu and Baz B. Baz B, I thought I told you to get lost. I'm the one who's going to train Yuzu, Candace huffed. Hey, why don't we let her decide who she'd rather be around, me, or your tramp squad? The man said imposingly as he got closer. Get out of my room, Baz B. Bambietta shouted. Or what, you'll kill me, ha ha ha, I'm not like the pencil-neck grunts you chop up around here, Bambietta. Try to stop me, Baz B threatened. You're not going to touch her, Baz B, Yuzu's with me, Candace said angrily as she pushed him back. Before the man could retaliate, Yuzu immediately walked past Candace. It's okay, I'll go with him. Yuzu, you don't have to do what he says. Candace protested, but shut up as the girl now stood behind Baz B. The man shook his head at the women in the room. See y'all later, girls, come on Kurosaki. Without another word, the duo left. They only made it halfway down the hallway, before Candace came charging after them. The blonde tackled Baz B into a wall and grabbed him by the collar. You can't do this. The man immediately pushed her back and reversed their situation as he grabbed her by the throat. Watch me, skank. Enough. You two, a third voice sounded. Yuzu, as well as the two Sternritters gawked in surprise when they noticed Haschwalth standing there. The Mohawk man immediately let go of Candace and directed a fiery gaze at the blonde man. I'll train the girl, Jugram, I don't trust her alone with Bambietta or Giselle. Neither do I, Baz B, that's why I'm the one watching her, Candace clarified. Jugram looked between them for a moment and sighed. Since you're both so adamant about this, you're both responsible for the girl. If anything happens to her, I'll kill you both. Is that clear? Both Quincy's went dead silent and traded grudging looks with one another. Finally they both nodded in acceptance. Before Haschwalth turned to leave, Yuzu quickly caught his attention. Haschwalth-sama, what are you guys going to do to my brother? The blonde gave her a stoic look. Assimilate him, or kill him. Nothing will stand in Yhwach's way. Yuzu paled at the news. Ichigo. Am I a hostage? Yuzu asked softly, causing the three Sternritters to react differently. No, but your loyalty will be tested if your brother fails to bend his knee to Yhwach. Keep that in mind, Jugram explained. After the blonde man left, Baz B and Candace traded looks again. The woman sighed. All right, well I guess we're both training her then. You want to split it up by days or shifts. Personally, I'd rather you not be in the picture when I'm training her. Likewise, he countered with a glare. You can have her for the rest of the day, and I'll grab Yuzu tomorrow, Candace concluded. Fine, see y'all later, Bazz-B dismissed. Without another word, the blonde took her leave and headed back for Bambietta's room. After she left, the Mohawk Quincy looked down at Yuzu and sighed. Well, now that we're finally free, let's see what you can do. Thanks for saving me from those women, Yuzu said courteously. The man said nothing as he gestured for the girl to follow him. Despite his demeanor, Yuzu already favored him over Bambietta's crew. Yuzu looked down concerned. They were saying a lot of weird stuff back there about Ichigo. What is she going to do to him? The girl's mind trailed off that thought as she tried to rationalize the other parts of their conversations. How am I supposed to survive here with those scary women around? That Bambietta was a monster. Back in said woman's room, Bambietta gave Candace a scowl. What's with you being some big damn hero all of a sudden? I was just messing with her. Now Bazz-B's got her. I hate that guy. Who does he think he is coming in here like that? Candace sighed. Bambietta scoffed. Not like it really matters anyways, she'll be around. I'm not done talking to her about her Oni-chan. I wonder how she would feel about me marrying her brother. Giselle said out of nowhere. Everyone in the room shot her a disbelieving glance. Bambietta huffed in annoyance. I thought I already told you Gigi, that ship won't sail. I'd sink it myself if I had to. You're so dramatic, Bambi-chan. Giselle giggled. I just want to go back and fight that arrogant bastard again. We could take Hueco Mundo right now. Why are we waiting? Bambietta sighed. Menina's cocked her head at Bambietta. I don't think taking Hueco Mundo is that simple. If they have an actual king, then we will need a considerable force to conquer them. Plus, it's not like we can steal a Hollow's Resurrección, and you watch can't leave this place for very long. So us running in blindly isn't something we should attempt. If they have an army then we should wait and see what His Majesty's plan is. I'm sure Yuwatch will give the word whenever he feels it necessary to capture Hueco Mundo. HMPH, if it were up to me, I'd lure White out with his little sister, Bambietta said as her mind went off on a diabolical imagination. You seem pretty obsessed about this guy, maybe more than Giselle is, Menina's laughed. Don't even say that, I'm not obsessed, I'm pissed off. Bambietta growled. That's a pretty fine line when it comes to you, Liltado noted. Inside Yuwatch's chambers Why would you choose me to be your successor? Oryu asked uncertainly. It seemed unfounded considering my lack of experience here. Do you find that strange, Oryu? The Quincy Emperor asked. Oryu adjusted his glasses. It will certainly cause discord amongst the ranks. You seem capable of understanding without my help. Though let me ask you something, why are you alive right now? Yuwatch questioned. The Quincy teenager shook his head and remained silent. It was obvious he had no clue what the Quincy leader was referring to. You are the only surviving gemist Quincy of the Oswallan, the only one in history to survive it. That makes you the last Quincy to survive in this world. That right there is a power that allows you to surpass even me. It is because of this, that you will be my eventual successor, the Emperor clarified. Yuryu's eyes widened surprised. I see, so then what about Yuzu? What are your plans for her? She is an anomaly much like yourself. One with a great potential to become powerful. She will make a fine Sternritter one day, Yuwatch nodded. Oryu frowned and looked away for a brief moment. Is she allowed to leave? No, she knows about us now, which makes her one of us. There is no going back for either you or Yuzu Kurosaki. Both of you will be great assets in the war to come. She'll learn to appreciate her position of honor here, and so will you, Yuwatch explained. Hueco Mundo, Ichigo After a short recovery, Ichigo and Nalil had the other 3 Arrancars up and walking. They were especially fearful to see Ichigo again, but after hearing about his rescue, they calmed down. Dordoni let out an over-exaggerated sigh of relief, as Nell finished the story. The man turned towards Ichigo and nodded respectfully. "You have my thanks, White. It is good to know that you are looking out for Arrancars. Sorry if we were a bit rude the last time we met," Gantenban exclaimed. Ichigo shook his head. "Don't worry about it, a lot has happened since then." "Hey White, when did you become an Arrancar if you don't mind me asking?" Chiruchi seemed curious. The Hollow King noticed all 4 Arrancars staring in anticipation. Nell seemed the most eager to know. "Yeah, you said you would tell me about all the stuff that's happened since then." "Alright, well after I parted ways with you guys," Ichigo said almost apologetically, "my 3 Ajuka followers and I just wandered the desert hunting and training. After they took down a dangerous Ajuka named Yami, we all came across another Vasto Lord, called Harabel. She had 2 Ajuka followers of her own. Well, I don't remember how it happened exactly, but we ended up joining forces. I traveled with her for a while, and continued training the Ajukas. Eventually, we came across others and I decided that I had to confront Barragan. He called everyone to Las Noches so that we could battle for the throne of Hueco Mundo." Ichigo narrated the recent events. Dordoni and Gantenbane seemed speechless that he would challenge Barragan. Chiruchi jaw dropped, and Nell's eyes widened. The sea-green-haired woman nodded. "I get it now, so Barragan heard about you gathering allies, and he thought you were going to challenge him for the throne." "I was going to challenge him. I would have a lot sooner if I hadn't met so many different hollows along the way. Well, moving on, when I confronted Barragan, another Vasto Lord showed up and fought us as well. His name is Grimjow, and he was that panther I spared the first time you saw me, Nell." "Really? That's unfortunate," she frowned. Ichigo noticed her saddened expression and smiled. "Don't worry, I didn't kill him or Barragan. After I won, I spared them both, and rallied Hueco Mundo under my rule. I became an Arrancar shortly after that, with the help of a friend." "A friend? Oh," Nell said distantly. "Well, that aside, I met this traitor Shinigami captain who told me about a mystical relic that can turn regular hollows into Arrancars. It's called the Hogyoku, and I just returned from the Soul Society with it." Ichigo explained the good news. The Arrancars looked ecstatic by the news, but Nell seemed doubtful. "How is that possible? Are you sure it can really do that?" "Well, I'm about to find out once I return to Las Noches. It seems like I ran into you guys just in time. You're all welcome to live in Las Noches with the rest of us." "So you're really the king of Hueco Mundo now?" Chiruchi shook her head as if the idea was surreal. Ichigo nodded. "Yes, and so long as I'm king, hollows will stand united against Shinigami and Quinny alike." "Wow, you're not so bad, White, but I'm still terrified of you," Gantenban chuckled. The Hollow King grinned at his remark. "Come on guys, let's go." Las Noches With Nell and the other Arrancars at his side, Ichigo finally arrived back at Las Noches. Just in time too, it seems, since Barragan was having a standoff with Aizen. "Shinigami, where is High King White? It has been too long," Barragan demanded imposingly. To his side stood most of his followers as well as Grimjow. The blue-haired beast growled. "Got a bit bloodied up, did you? What happened, Shinigami?" Jin and Konami were both there, as well as several other important authority figures in Las Noches. Right now it seemed Ulquiorra was the only thing keeping them from attacking the Shinigami captains. Ichigo quickly made his presence known as he landed between Aizen and Barragan. "I'm back." Just in time, too, these two were about to start a fight, Ulquiorra explained as he ignored Grimjow and Barragan's angry remarks. "I saw this one return without you, bleeding. You can understand my concern," Barragan told Ichigo as he pointed at Aizen. Ichigo nodded his head. "Yes, I sent him ahead. There was a battle in the outskirts of Hueco Mundo. I went to investigate, and brought back the Arankars involved. As for Aizen's blood, don't worry about it. Grimjow and Berrigan both seemed to understand it as they examined Aizen's wound. It was clear to them now that Ichigo had to assert himself over the Shinigami captain. Arankars. HMPH, what were you all fighting out there anyway? Grimjow asked curiously. His gaze was focused on Nell, Dordoni, Chiruchi, and Gantenban. They were all very quiet, much to the Vasto Lord's interest. Nell quickly spoke for herself as she explained the situation. We were attacked by these strange humans called Quincy's. They were talking about abducting Arankars. Ichigo showed up just in time to stop them. Quincy's. Berrigan hissed. Disgusting. Aizen had a somewhat troubled face as he looked at Ichigo. The Hollow King nodded. They're part of some organization called the Wandenreich. They want to conquer Hueco Mundo. Never. Berrigan hissed furiously. Ichigo nodded in agreement. That's right, it will never happen so long as we live. We managed to retrieve the Hogyoku, so let's start building our army. Yes. Grimjow exclaimed in approval. Ichigo couldn't help but notice that Aizen, Jin, and Tucson were all troubled by the news of the Quincy's. Aizen in particular seemed deep in thought. This Hogyoku better work, otherwise these Shinigami will die, Berrigan added. My, isn't he the charming fellow? Jin smart-mouthed. Tucson remained silent on the other hand. Aizen nodded. I assure you it will. Let's go to the tower throne room and test it then, Berrigan said darkly. Ulquiorra, send word for Haribel and Wunderweiss. Jin, Konami, Sosuke, come with me, Ichigo announced. Berrigan glanced over at GGIO, gather up the strongest hollows. Yes my king, GGIO nodded before leaping off. Everyone else dispersed or fell in line as they all made their way towards the main throne room. They didn't make it far before an excited pack of Ijukas caught up with them. Ichigo. Apache pranced cheerfully as she ran up behind him. As the hollow turned around, she was surprised to see his fragmented mask and face. Mainoli traded a shocked look with Lolly. Ichigo's mask, it's broken. Hey girls, good to see you again. I'm an Arankar now. You look so, well less scary than you used to, Apache said approvingly. Ichigo nodded. Good, how would you girls like to become Arankars too? How? Lolly cut in excitedly as the group continued forward. Glancing over at Aizen, Ichigo answered, just come with us, I'll explain everything. Later Gathered within the open ceiling throne room atop one of Las Noches towers was every one of Hueco Mundo's most powerful or established hollows. After hearing Ichigo's story about the invasion of the Soul Society and his skirmish with the Quincy's, they were all fired up. I say we kill every last one of those pathetic creatures. They dare to proclaim themselves capable of conquering Hueco Mundo. Berrigan spat. Grimjow grinned aggressively. Shinigami and Quincy's, I can't wait to slaughter them all. Haribel stared at Ichigo seriously. If you sent a message like that to both of these factions, then we will likely be in the crossfire of a three-way war. I know, but that's what it is going to take for them to understand our power. Hueco Mundo needs to be united now, more than ever. The Shinigami I recruited into our ranks are traitors. They seek to bring about the Soul Society's destruction. Whether you like it or not, you will all work with them. They answer only to me, is that understood? Ichigo stated sternly. Most of the room's inhabitants offered their various signs of acknowledgement. Ichigo nodded before focusing his gaze on Aizen. Sosuke, bring the Hogyoku here. I want to test if it really can turn hollows into Arankars. Everyone in the room stared at the man curiously as he brought a tiny glowing gem out of his outfit. Aizen placed it on a pedestal and looked over the crowd of hollows. Do I have any volunteers that want to go first? I'll do it, Haribel said calmly as she walked up first. Aizen grinned at her in his suave way, and nodded. Good, by the way, I went ahead and took the liberty of securing all of you clothes. That was rather nice of you Aizen-sama, Jin chuckled. Some of the Vasto lords gave Aizen curious looks, but Ichigo was quick to approve. Good thinking, each of you will definitely understand once your transformation is over. Harabel looked between Ichigo and Aizen for a moment uncertainly. So how does this work exactly? Place your hand on the pedestal, Aizen instructed, as he caused the strange orb to emanate a bright light. Slowly, the blonde Vasto lord reached forward and touched it. Everyone watched in anticipation as it quickly surrounded her in some kind of energy-like substance. After a massive surge of yellow energy erupted into the sky, she fell to the ground. Her appearance was shocking to many of the hollows present. Her white, armor-like skin was now darker and soft-looking. She appeared absent of any noticeable hollow features other than part of her mask's mouthpiece and two chest pieces that extended partially over her exposed chest. Aizen handed her one of the white uniforms and smiled. It would seem the process was a success. Did it work? The blonde asked as she took the clothes and looked around at everyone's expressions. The Ijukas in particular seemed amazed by it. The mouth fragment of her hollow mask opened for a moment as she looked at Ichigo. He could see her human mouth beneath it and nodded approvingly. She's definitely an Arrancar now. How does it look? The woman asked as she looked over herself. It was then she noticed the sword nearby. You look amazing as always, Mistress Harabel. Sung Sun commented in amazement. Many of the other Ijukas offered various remarks. Neutra couldn't help but mention her flesh. You look so softer than before, and exposed. I feel stronger, Harabel stated. Nell looked at Aizen approvingly. This is amazing, every hollow in Las Noches can be an Arrancar now. That's the plan, Ichigo nodded. Apache walked up to Ichigo's side and nudged him with her head. Hey, Ichigo, promise me you won't laugh at my appearance. Why would I do that? I'm looking forward to seeing how all of you Ijukas turn out, Ichigo replied with a smile. The Ijuka's eyes lit up with surprise. Really? Well, I'll go next then. Not so fast. Mainoli and I want to go next, Lolly cut in imposingly. Mila Rose laughed at them as she shook her head. I doubt you two will turn out as extravagant as me. Such modesty, Mila Rose, Sung Sun giggled. Many of Grimjow's Ijuka followers whispered to one another about whether or not they trusted what was happening. The blue-haired Vasto Lord quickly silenced their gossiping as he stared at Aizen. So we're all going to have to do this. Yes, I assure you it is worth it, Aizen reassured the former panther. I will go next then, Barragan volunteered. It will be interesting to see if this thing truly can amplify my power. Harabel stared at Ichigo, as if expecting a reaction about her new appearance. He quickly acknowledged her curiosity. You look good, Harabel. Ichigo nodded. You should get dressed though. She nodded silently as she grabbed the white garb and took them to a more private location. Barragan immediately came forward and placed his hand on the Hogyoku next. Everyone watched with awe as his skeletal form soon fleshed out into the form of an older muscular man. After the purple burst of power, he examined himself curiously. I feel more powerful. It will be interesting to put it to the test. Wunderweiss will go, the Vasto Lord himself said as he walked up to the pedestal. Aizen gave him a curious look as if contemplating the idea, but quickly nodded in approval. You're next then, Wunderweiss. After the Vasto Lord's transformation, he now had the appearance of a young purple-eyed blonde. His mask fragment greatly resembled his mask's former headpiece. Where did you find this creature? Barragan asked Ichigo as he examined Wunderweiss. Wunderweiss is from the Manos forest, the newborn Arrancar answered. Everyone seemed curious about the way he referred to himself in third person. Hey, when can we go? Mainoli asked Ichigo anxiously. All of the Ijukas can go ahead and line up, Ichigo pointed. The 5 female Ijukas raced to the front of the line and wrestled for the front. As Mainoli and Lolly pushed back and forth, Apache slipped through to the pedestal and looked down at the Hogyoku curiously. Reaching out one of her legs, she touched it with a hoofed foot. It quickly did its work and after a brief flash, Apache was now in a human form. The woman immediately covered herself despite the awkwardness of her new body and checked everyone's faces. She had a tomboyish hairstyle, a slender physique, and most noticeably 2 different colored eyes. One was ice blue, and the other a soft bronze. The darker eye had a red marking outlining it. Her mask fragment resembled the horn from her Ijuka form. Ignoring the vast array of good and bad comments, She fearfully met Ichigo's gaze, wondering how she looked to him. He gave her a warm smile, much to her relief. "Looks good, Apache." She felt an unusual sensation in her face and looked away. What is this feeling? Is she blushing? How cute, Jin thought amusedly. "I'm going next," Lolly announced as she narrowly slipped past Mainoli. One by one, all of the Ajukas transformed into humanoid appearances. The girls in Ichigo and Harabelle's respective groups turned out quite nicely in his opinion. Mainoli and Lolly had similar mask fragments, but on opposite sides of their faces. Mainoli had shorter, styled blonde hair with a blue eye, whilst Lolly had black pigtails and a maroon-colored eye. Their appearances were quite shocking considering the fact that both girls were former insect-like Ajukas. Ichigo couldn't help but notice the striking similarity each Arrancar had to their previous Ajuka forms. Sung Sun, Mila Rose, and many of Grimjow's followers greatly resembled their former appearances. Their mask fragments in particular were the defining parts. After his entire group went, Grimjow sighed, "Well, I guess I should do this too." Everyone watched eagerly as the Blue Vasto Lord stepped up and touched the Hogyoku inciting his transformation. Most of his mask broke off, and his hair receded too. After his armored feline traits disappeared, the only thing left was a mask mouthpiece covering the right part of his jaw. His blue eyes had green marks streaked out from them and his face was noticeably masculine. Grimjow looked unimpressed by his human-like form at first, but it didn't take him long to notice an obvious difference in his power. He looked over at his Zanpakuto. "This is a strange feeling. I know that blade's name. Pantera." Grimjow didn't say anything, much to Ichigo's surprise, but his followers each had their own various remarks of approval. The following hollows were Baragon's guards, and several of the notable Ajukas that swore allegiance to Ichigo the other day. Among them were the tentacle-armed Ajuka, the praying mantis, the butterfly, and the many-eyed, fiendish one. They all had similar transformations as they were turned into Arrancars. After every hollow in the throne room had gone through the process, Aizen turned towards the natural Arrancars. "The Hogyoku can enhance the powers of natural Arrancars as well. Any of you care to accept a boost in power?" Aizen asked. Stark, who had been quiet for the better part of ordeal, nodded as he and Lilinet walked up to it. He was about to touch it, but stopped. "I'm already powerful enough." "Come on, just do it, Stark." Lilinet convinced. "We're not going to kill anyone with our power around here." Fine, he gave in to her demand. After both of them received an upgrade from the Hogyoku, Ichigo motioned for Nell and her comrades to go next. "You guys definitely need an upgrade, maybe it'll give you an edge over the Quincy's next time." "Damn those Quincy's," Chiruchi said with a bitter glare. "I am still amazed you're able to create Arrancars. We spent years looking for others." Dordoni spoke to Aizen. Gantenban looked over at Nell. "You should go first, Nalil." "Okay," the woman replied. Her sea-green hair flowed elegantly as she made her way there. After she and her comrades received the power-up, Ulquiorra was the second to last one to do so. His was much flashier than most of the others expected. With everyone else completed, Aizen rested his eyes on Ichigo last. "You too, Ichigo." "It seems strange you would want to empower me," the Hollow King shrugged. Aizen gave him a serious stare. "You need more power. Please accept the Hogyoku's enhancement. You won't regret it." Despite the unusual tension between the two, Ichigo felt that Aizen was genuine in his desire to empower the Hollows. His actions thus far had proven it. Looking around at his inner circle of followers, he could sense a dramatic difference in their power levels. "I wonder what this will do to me," Ichigo thought. Reaching his hand down over the orb, he looked at Aizen curiously as the Shinigami reached down to touch it as well. The moment both of their hands touched the orb, an unrestrained power erupted forth. It fired into the sky in a blinding display of brilliance and power. Every Arrancar present, as well as Jin and Konami, felt crushed under the overwhelming pressure in the air and immediately fell to their knees. It was as if the gravity became 100 times greater. Ulquiorra watched the scene with both fear and amazement. "What is this power? I can't even move." Las Noches began to shake from the sheer, overwhelming force of the Hogyoku. Jin's eyes visibly opened as he stared at the Hogyoku, which had Ichigo and Aizen's hands both on it still. Their combined power is causing the desert to shake. What is Aizen doing? As the light got even brighter, everyone then felt the air become weightless. The pressure was now gone as both the Arrancar and the Shinigami glowed profusely. Barrigan watched the scene with disbelief. I can't sense their power anymore, what is this? After a brief moment of weightlessness in the air, Aizen let go of the orb. The moment he did so, the immeasurable pressure returned, forcing everyone down again. It began to diminish, slowly, as Ichigo let go of the Hogyoku as well. After a short recession, things were back to normal. Everyone stared incredulously at Ichigo and Aizen, wondering what the hell just happened. Grimmjow piped up furiously, "What did you just do?" Ichigo looked down at his hand for a moment. It was seared from the raw power. Aizen had a similar mark on his hand as well. The Shinigami took in Ichigo's reaction before explaining the situation. When a being that possesses power greater than several captains touches the Hogyoku, they briefly fuse for a moment. When this happens, it will radiate power as if fully awake. So the two of them touching it at the same time caused it to awaken. Though I wonder why it didn't happen earlier. I wonder if Captain Aizen combined it with his own Hogyoku when Ichigo was dealing with those Quincy's. Jin contemplated. Ichigo looked down at his seared hand curiously. What was that just now? I've never felt that kind of power before. Reaching down to retrieve the Hogyoku, Aizen smiled approvingly. It is done, you are all Arrancars now. Might I suggest you all get some rest? Later we will turn the rest of the lesser hollows, if that is okay with you, Ichigo. The hollow kind nodded. That's fine, everybody go take a break. Try to get used to your new bodies. Once we get the rest of Las Noches transformed, our training begins. May I speak to you in private? Aizen requested. The hollow nodded in response, yes. After a short trip to an adjacent throne tower, Ichigo and Aizen landed. The hollow stared at Aizen curiously as he wondered what the Shinigami wanted to talk about. The man turned around slowly and gave Ichigo a serious look. You will need to be extra vigilant. If Quincy's have their eyes set on Hueco Mundo, then they pose a much larger threat than the Shinigami for the time being. It might be in our best interest to prepare for them first. What do you know about this Wandenreich, anyway? The Quincy's I encountered mentioned their emperor. You watch, Ichigo explained. Aizen seemed unfazed by the name. The father of all Quincy's, he is remarkably powerful. Godlike according to some. Even the captain commander wouldn't take him lightly. The Hogyoku's powers will help accelerate your ascension, but you must not underestimate him. You still need more power, before you're ready. So what would you have me do? How could I possibly become more powerful? Ichigo wondered. Aizen shrugged. You're the Hollow King, I'm sure you can figure it out. Though it might interest you to know that hollows are poisonous to Quincy's. That is an advantage you should exploit. Do you think we should attack first or wait for them to come here? Ichigo asked. The man gave Ichigo a calm look. You have an advantage here, I would wait for them to come. Once you've thinned out their forces, it will be a perfect time for a counterattack. You will need to be ready whenever you face them. You will need to be ready for your watch when the time comes. Is that all? Am I going to kill the Soul King for you too? Ichigo asked sarcastically. The brown-haired captain looked down for a moment before meeting Ichigo's gaze. Only if I fail. By the way, I've been thinking about something ever since our little fight in the Manos forest. You never did tell me about your real Bankai, Ichigo stated seriously. The former captain tilted his head. No, I did not. If your Shikai can hypnotize people, then why couldn't you wipe out the Soul Society by yourself? I mean, if you caught Yamamoto by surprise with it, what could he honestly do? Ichigo wondered. Sosuke shook his head. You underestimate everyone around you, Ichigo. That is one of your greatest weaknesses. It will be your undoing if you're not careful. That is why I am keeping you on a need-to-know basis. Though if you must know, I doubt my Shikai could match Genryusai Yamamoto. He is the most powerful Shinigami to ever live. So what about your Bankai? Ichigo persisted. I know you're more powerful than you let on, Aizen. There must be a reason you didn't do this by yourself. Aizen sighed. I will tell you when the time comes. When we both touched the Hogyoku, I felt your power. You're not a normal Shinigami, are you? Ichigo asked. The man shook his head. No, I am not, and you are not a normal hollow. As strange as it sounds, we're not so different, you and I. Despite your lack of subtlety or patience, I actually respect you. Well, you delivered on your promise about creating Arankars, so I suppose we're on decent terms for now. Still, part of me wonders what you would have done had I not been able to break your illusion, Ichigo began. I would have secured your allegiance, one way or another, Aizen replied honestly. HMPH, well you have it, so long as you mind yourself, Ichigo nodded his head. Very well, I enjoyed our talk Ichigo. Get some rest, tomorrow we will transform the rest of the hollows in Las Noches, the man said as he took his leave. After he was gone, Ichigo looked up into the eternal night sky. Tomorrow, huh? Whenever the hell that is. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.